Welcome to Creepy Vibes. This is volume 1 of 20 disturbing true Texas horror stories, a collection of real experiences shared by people who lived through them and never forgot what they saw. Texas is a massive state, but with all that space comes long, silent highways, isolated small towns, and miles of land where no one can hear you scream. These aren't urban legends. They aren't campfire tales. These are real accounts from regular people who found themselves in situations they couldn't explain and sometimes couldn't escape from. You'll hear from drivers who picked up passengers that vanished without a trace, campers who were stalked deep in the woods by something that didn't sound human, and families who moved into homes they should have left the moment the first door slammed shut. If you're from Texas, you might recognize some of these places. But even if you're not, I'd recommend keeping your lights on tonight, just in case something's listening. This is volume 1 of 20 disturbing true Texas horror stories. You're listening to Creepy Vibes. Let's begin. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something like this, but I haven't slept properly in 2 weeks, and it's getting hard to pretend nothing happened. Maybe writing it out will help me figure out what's real. This all started about a month ago on the outskirts of Lubbock, Texas, late July. If you're from the area, you might have heard of this spot called Dead Man's Curve. It's not marked on any official map, just a nickname locals have passed around forever. It's this tight, blind bend on a 2-lane road just east of town, right past FM 1729, the kind of road you only use if you're from here, or you're trying to take a shortcut through the cotton fields late at night. It's a death trap. Number. Lights, no guardrails, nothing but darkness and barbed wire and flat nothing stretching in every direction. It's also the site of at least one fatal crash every year, usually some teen, usually in summer. The papers always say the same thing. Driver lost control. No evidence of braking. One passenger unaccounted for. Every single time. I never really believed the rumors until that night. It was Friday, July 11th. I remember because it was my younger brother's birthday, and I had dropped off a gift at our parents' place in Idalou before heading back to Lubbock. It was already past 11:30 p.m. by the time I got on the road, and I figured I'd cut through the back way to shave off a few minutes. The sky was clear, maybe 82 degrees, and the air had that dry, humming heat that never really goes away in West Texas. My old Toyota was low on gas, the SC barely worked, and my Spotify playlist had cut out about 10 minutes earlier because there's barely any signal out there. So it was just me, the hum of the engine, and the sound of tires rolling over cracked asphalt. I wasn't thinking about the curve until I was nearly on top of it. There's no sign warning you, just a sharp veer to the left, and if you're going more than 45, you're done for. I slowed down as I approached it, mostly out of habit, but also because I saw something strange. There was a car pulled over on the shoulder right before the bend. A beat-up silver Buick with one headlight flickering. The driver's side door was wide open, but no one was inside or around it. No hazard lights, no movement. Just that one pulsing headlight strobing in the dark. I slowed to a crawl, debating whether to stop, but something about the whole scene felt off. Then I saw her, a girl standing about 15 feet from the car, right at the edge of the road, almost in the ditch. She wasn't waving or calling out, just standing perfectly still. Her arms were down at her sides and her face was pale in the moonlight. I remember she was barefoot, wearing a dark hoodie that looked soaked even though it hadn't rained in days. I stopped the car, rolled the window down halfway. "You all right?" I called out. She didn't answer, didn't even blink, just tilted her head a little to the left like she was studying me. That's when I noticed something that still makes my stomach turn. The air coming from the window was cold, ice cold, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. My AC was barely running. It shouldn't have been able to do that. And worse, I realized my seat was wet. Not damp, soaked. I looked down and my entire seat, even my jeans, were drenched in cold water. No smell. No sound of a leak. Just wet. Freezing cold and wet. I looked back at the girl and she was suddenly closer. Maybe 5 feet from my window. Now, I hadn't seen her move. I swear to God. That's when I panicked. I floored it. Took the curve harder than I should have and almost slid into the opposite ditch. The tires squealed and I felt the back end fishtail, but somehow I made it through. My heart was pounding, my palms slipping on the wheel from how damp they were. Cold didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. I checked the rearview mirror once I was a few hundred yards out, and my stomach dropped. There was someone in the back seat, just a silhouette. Shoulders hunched, head low like they were crouched forward. I only saw it for a second because the dome light flickered, and then the car shut off, mid-drive. Everything, engine, lights, power steering, dead. I slammed the brakes, and the car rolled to a stop on the side of the road. I was breathing so hard I almost passed out. Fumbling for my phone, trying to turn it on, call someone, but the screen was just black. Not dead, just unresponsive. Then came the smell. It hit me like a wave, mildew, pond scum, rotting leaves. Like something that had been pulled out of a swamp. I turned around. Nothing in the back seat, but the cushion was soaked and ice cold. That was enough. I got out of the car, slammed the door, and stood in the middle of the road like an idiot, staring at the empty field. Crickets chirping, a coyote howling in the distance. That smell still hanging in the air. I was out there maybe 5 minutes before the car suddenly clicked back to life. No explanation. Lights flicked on. Engine purred. My phone lit up like nothing had happened. I didn't wait. I got in and drove straight home. But the story doesn't end there. I told a coworker about it a few days later, just the basic outline. Nothing crazy. He went pale. Told me his cousin died on that curve 5 years ago. Lost control. No skid marks. Car totaled. The weird part? He was alone in the vehicle. But the car was registered as having 2 occupants. They found 2 wet seats. And the driver's seat was pushed too far back for the guy's height. I've since looked into the local archives, small town stuff, not easy to dig up. But it's there. A dozen crashes over the last 20 years. All single car accidents. All with unexplained wet interiors. In some cases, surviving drivers claimed they weren't alone. That someone was with them when they got in, but no one could remember who. One girl swore she picked up a hitchhiker minutes before the crash. Gave the police a full description. Young woman, barefoot, soaked hoodie. They never found the passenger. I haven't driven that way since. I avoid it like the plague. But sometimes, late at night, I get a chill in my car for no reason. A wet seat. A flicker in the mirror. And once, just once, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. All it said was, "You saw me." But you didn't. Stop, and the worst part? The timestamp said 11:42 p.m. The exact time I passed that car on the side of the road. I've never posted anything on here before, and to be honest, I don't expect many people to believe this. I've gone back and forth about sharing it at all, but lately I've been having trouble sleeping again. It's like something from all those years ago is trying to find its way back in. So maybe writing this will help put a lid on it. I used to work in local news. Nothing glamorous, just a mid-level technician job at XAT 12 in San Antonio. This was back in the early 80s. I was 24 in 1983, fresh out of a 2-year community college program for broadcasting, and I managed to land a job in the editing department. Mostly overnight shifts, prepping B-roll, cutting up segments for reruns, that sort of thing. The station wasn't huge, but it had been around forever. One of those concrete buildings with ugly drop ceilings and buzzing fluorescent lights that always made everything feel like it was either too early or too late in the day. It started the week after Halloween, 1983, November 2nd. I remember because it had been unseasonably cold that week. Not freezing, but in the 40s at night, which was rare for us. I came in around 10:45 p.m. for my shift, just like always. My boss, Roy, was already halfway out the door, coat in hand, waving to me like he always did. "Take it easy, Mikey. Don't burn the place down." "Only a little," I said, same joke every night. I sat down in the editing bay, which was just a narrow little room with soundproof padding on the walls, 2 reel-to-reel decks, and a table for splicing tape. I'd usually have a pot of coffee going and a little radio playing soft jazz from KRTU, just to stay awake. But that night, there was a box waiting on the chair when I came in, a plain cardboard box. No label, no writing, just a dull strip of packing tape holding it closed. I assumed it was something Roy had left for me, maybe footage from a local high school game or one of those pre-recorded interviews we sometimes had to clean up for air. I opened it, and inside was a film reel. No canister. Just loose 16mm film, spooled around a slightly rusted metal core. There was a post-it note stuck to the reel, and all it said was, "Edit. Urgent." No name, no initials. Nothing else. I checked with the assignment logbook. No entry. No mention of anything being dropped off. That should have been the first red flag, but I didn't think much of it. It was late. I was tired. Stuff slipped through the cracks all the time. People forgot to log things. I figured Roy or someone from production would tell me more about it the next day. I loaded the reel onto the deck. I want to be very careful about how I describe what I saw because I still can't make sense of it. It was raw footage, silent, grainy black and white. The time code at the bottom looked like it had been manually spliced on, jumpy and uneven, like whoever had added it didn't know what they were doing. The footage started with a wide shot of a field. Just tall grass moving in the wind. I think it was late afternoon, maybe early evening. The sky looked overcast. Then it cut. No transition. No fade. Just a hard cut to something else. A man, maybe mid-30s, standing in a small room. Bare walls. A folding chair behind him. He looked directly at the camera. His mouth was moving like he was talking fast, but there was no sound. And his eyes looked wrong. I don't know how to explain it. Like they were shaking in his skull. Like he was being forced to keep them open. Cut again. This time, a girl. Maybe 12, 13, sitting in the passenger seat of a car. You couldn't see the driver. Her mouth was open, wide. Like she was mid-scream, but again, no sound. Her body was totally still. Only her eyes were moving, darting toward the camera. Cut. A kitchen, empty. Then a slow zoom into the hallway. A figure stepped into the frame, wearing what looked like a mask. Not like a Halloween mask, more like one of those old CPR dummies. Blank, off-white. Too small for the head it was covering. Cut. Another face. This time an older woman. I recognized her. Her name was Martha Cardenas. She'd been all over the news that summer. Went missing from a grocery store parking lot in Bernie in July. Her mouth was wide open and a silent scream, just like the others. The reel ended suddenly. No credits. No station watermark. Just the clatter of the tape flapping at the end. I sat there for probably 10 full minutes, just staring at the dark screen. My first thought was that it was a prank. Some messed up art project or student film someone dumped on us as a joke. But then I thought about Martha. That footage wasn't from the news archives. That angle, it was up close, personal, like whoever shot it was right there with her. Pulled the reel off the deck and locked it in the metal cabinet in the back of the bay. Then I called Roy at home. He didn't answer. I left a message on his machine. Hey, something weird came in tonight. Call me. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. Just kept pacing around my apartment, replaying those images in my head. The way their mouths moved, the fear in their eyes. Like they were trying to warn me. Roy never called back. The next night, I got in early around 9:30. The cabinet was open. The reel was gone. Roy's office door was open too, which was unusual. He was always out by 6 like clockwork. I poked my head in, empty. One of the day editors, Sandy, walked by and saw me. I asked her if Roy had come in at all. She frowned. Didn't you hear? He didn't show up today. Didn't call. Kind of a big deal right now. He never came back. The official word was that he vanished from his house sometime after 7 a.m. that morning. His car was still in the garage, keys in the ignition. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. It was like he just stood up and walked into thin air. I told the police what I'd seen. About the reel, the missing people, I even described some of the footage. They took a report but didn't seem to take it seriously. I was just a night tech after all. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was sleep deprived or trying to insert myself into the case. The reel was never recovered. No record of it in the logs. No one else ever admitted to seeing it. Over the next few months, 3 more people vanished from the San Antonio area. One of them, a teenage boy named Caleb, looked exactly like the kid in one of the clips I hadn't mentioned to the cops. I kept that to myself. I don't know why. Maybe fear. Maybe guilt. Maybe both. Eventually, I quit the station. Moved to Corpus for a while. Tried to forget it. But here's why I'm writing this now. 2 nights ago, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name and an old version of my address that hasn't been used in decades. Inside was a VHS tape. Black plastic. No label. I don't own a player anymore, but there's a pawn shop down the road that had one. I brought the tape in this morning. Told the guy it was a home video I hadn't seen in years. He let me use the demo TV. It's the same footage. Exactly the same. Only this time, the reel is longer. It ends with a new clip. The editing bay at KSAT. My back is to the camera. I'm threading the film into the deck. The timestamp says, November 2nd, 1983, 11:12 p.m. I don't remember anyone being in there with me. I didn't hear anything. I didn't feel anything, but just before the clip cuts out, I turn around, and I'm mouthing something. I played it over and over, trying to read my own lips. The best I can make out is this: it's behind you. I haven't slept since. Please, if anyone else out there ever worked at KSAT in the 80s, or knows something about the Devil's Tape, that's what people online are calling it, message me. Just want to know I'm not the only one who saw it. This isn't something I usually talk about, especially not online, but it's been stuck in my head for years. I guess I've been looking for a place to unload it without people thinking I'm losing it. I don't even know what kind of story. This is urban legend, coincidence, or something worse, but it happened, and it hasn't let go of me since. I grew up in Freeport, Texas. Small town near the Gulf. Kind of boring, honestly. Lots of fishing, oil work, mosquitoes the size of quarters, and flat. Hot land that stretches out into woods that get real dense the further west you go. Back in high school, my friends and I used to do what bored kids do. We'd explore places we shouldn't. Old barns, irrigation tunnels, abandoned fishing shacks. Stuff that felt dangerous but wasn't really dangerous, you know? It was 2007. I was 17. And there wasn't much else to do on summer nights except drive around until you either got drunk or creeped out. One of those nights, my buddy Dylan brought up something his older brother told him about a tree. Out in Brazoria County, somewhere along an old game trail near the San Bernard Wildlife Refuge. Dylan's brother swore there was a tree out there that cried blood. I remember him laughing when he said it, but then added real quiet, "They found a woman hanged there in the 60s, and her dog howled for 3 days before it died." That part got under my skin. I don't know why the detail about the dog made it feel more real, but it did. We decided to find it. Dumb, yeah, but we were kids. It was me, Dylan, Amanda, and TJ. We waited until a Saturday, left around 9:45 p.m., grabbed some Whataburger, and headed west down FM 2611. There's a stretch of that road where the streetlights thin out and everything turns pitch black except for your headlights. We pulled off onto a dirt maintenance road Dylan swore led toward the place. It had rained 2 days before, so the road was muddy and we nearly got stuck a few times. Dylan's old Silverado could handle it, but TJ kept joking we'd get stranded and eaten by tree witches. None of us were really scared, not yet. By the time we parked, it was 11:08 p.m. I remember checking my phone because I'd already lost signal and thought that was weird, since we weren't that far out. The air felt heavy, like it does before a storm, but the forecast had said clear skies. The moon was out though, full and bright, and that helped. We walked maybe 15 minutes through brush and mosquitoes, following a trail that had clearly been used before, probably by hunters. Amanda stopped at one point and said, "Do y'all hear that?" And we all got quiet. There was something like a faint dripping sound. At first, I thought it was water coming off the trees from the rain a few days before, but there hadn't been any wind or anything to shake the branches. Then Dylan said, "That's it. That's gotta be it." And we saw it. The tree didn't look special at first, just a massive live oak, gnarled and wide like so many others out here. But as we got closer, we saw the trunk. It was dark, almost black, like it had been scorched. And there was sap running down it, thick, deep red sap that looked too dark to be from a tree. It glistened in the moonlight. Amanda whispered, "That looks like blood," and I couldn't argue. It didn't look like sap. It was slow and heavy, and it gave off this faint, iron-like smell, like rusted metal. But the worst part was the sound. That slow, wet drip drip ... and something else. Underneath it, I swear to God, it sounded like someone crying. A low, wheezing sob, barely audible, but constant. It wasn't wind, and it wasn't an animal. It sounded human. TJ turned around and said, "Nope, not doing this," and started walking back. He was always the first to joke, but something about the tree shut him up fast. Dylan walked up to the base and touched the bark. "What are you doing, dude?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the trunk like he was hypnotized. Dylan. Still nothing. Amanda grabbed his arm, and the second she touched him, he gasped like he'd been holding his breath underwater. His eyes were wide, and he just said, "I saw her." We all stopped. "Saw who?" Amanda asked. He looked around, confused, like he didn't know where he was. "The woman. She was hanging, and she looked right at me." We left. We didn't talk. We just turned around and walked fast back to the truck. I felt like something was behind us the whole way, even though I never saw anything. The woods were too quiet, like every cricket and bird had gone silent. When we got back to the truck, I swear I heard that crying again just for a second. Like the sound followed us. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. We texted a little but didn't say much. The next day, Dylan didn't answer anyone's calls. When we finally went to his house, his mom said he was in his room, locked in, and wouldn't talk to her. It got worse after that. Over the next few weeks, Dylan changed. He got real quiet, stopped coming to school. When we did see him, he looked pale, like he hadn't been sleeping. Said he kept hearing crying at night outside his window. His dog started acting strange too, barking at nothing, refusing to go near Dylan's room. Then one day, it just died. They found it curled up under the porch, like it had just given up. After that, Dylan stopped answering our texts completely. We graduated a few months later. Amanda moved to Austin. TJ left for the Army. I stayed. Local went to community college. Tried to forget about all of it. Then about 3 years ago, I was driving through that part of the county again. I was on my way to meet a client for work some property dispute. It was about 5:30 p.m., late October. The sun was setting and the road dipped into one of those wooded stretches. I hadn't even thought about the tree in years, but then I heard it faint, just a soft crying sound coming from somewhere in the trees. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. But in my rearview mirror, I swear I saw something standing off the road right next to one of the oaks. Just for a second. A pale shape. Like a woman. Hanging. I've tried to find Dylan since then. Looked him up on Facebook, Instagram, everything. Nothing. No trace. I even drove by his mom's place last year. It was empty. For sale. Overgrown lawn, windows boarded up. I've talked to a few older locals over the years. Mention the tree without being too specific. One guy, a retired game warden, got real quiet and said, "You mean the crying tree?" Like it was something people only whispered about. He told me the story almost the same as Dylan's brother had said. In 1969, a woman named Eileen Hargrave went missing after a fight with her husband. They found her 3 days later, hanging from a tree deep in the woods. Her dog had run off into the trees and was found later too dead from exhaustion. Locals said it had howled the whole time. They cut the body down, but the tree started oozing that sap a few weeks later. And the story started, "I don't go out that way anymore. Ever. I won't even deliver down past FM 2611. But sometimes, if it's late and I can't sleep, I'll hear something outside. Just faint. A soft, wet drip and crying. Always crying." This happened 3 years ago, but I still can't sleep right when I think about it. I was on a solo road trip through West Texas. I do that sometimes to clear my head. Just pack a bag, throw a mattress in the back of my Subaru, and disappear. For a few days. I work remotely, so I can afford to get off the grid now and then. In May 2022, I decided to head toward Big Bend, figuring I'd hit Marfa, Alpine, then maybe spend a night in Terlingua before cutting back up toward Fort Davis. I'd been to Terlingua once as a kid on a family trip, but I barely remembered it. If you've never been, Terlingua's not even a town in the traditional sense. It's an old mining settlement, mostly ruins now, with a few scattered buildings and a kind of strange, artsy desert community built around the decay. There's a cemetery, a ghost town, some off-grid houses, a bar called the Starlight Theater. That's weirdly lively on weekends. It's quiet, eerie, and, yeah, haunted feeling. I got there around 6:30 p.m., just as the sun was starting to dip behind the Chizos Mountains. The air was dry and still, and the only sound was the wind kicking dust across the road. I remember checking the temperature. It was 89 degrees Fahrenheit, but dropping fast once the sun went down. I parked outside the cemetery, figuring I'd stretch my legs before heading to my Airbnb, which was a casita a couple miles away. As I walked the dirt paths between the graves, something about the place felt too quiet, not peaceful, just off. The cemetery was mostly wooden crosses and stone markers, lots of them slanted or falling apart. Some had photos of the deceased embedded in them, most dating back to the early 1900s. A few had candles, or rusted trinkets like coins and old tools. It felt deeply personal, but also abandoned. I stood at one particular grave. I think the name was Santiago Montoya, 1904 to 1926, and I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone. Not that someone was near me physically, just that I was being watched. You know the feeling, right? Like eyes on the back of your neck. I looked up and scanned the empty hills. Nothing. Then I heard boots, heavy boots, slowly walking over. Gravel. I turned around, expecting maybe another tourist or a local. Nothing. No one. Just the wind. I told myself it was probably just the creaking of wood or a rabbit in the brush, but it really sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, one after the other. I left the cemetery and drove to the casita with my windows up, telling myself I was just spooking myself out. The casita was this off-grid adobe-style hut a few miles out of town. No Wi-Fi, barely any cell reception. When I got there around 7:15, the sun was pretty much gone, and the desert was bathed in that dim blue light that makes everything look flat and unreal. I made a quick dinner, canned soup on a portable stove, and tried to settle in, but something just felt wrong. Around 9:45, I stepped outside to brush my teeth. It was pitch black except for the stars, and I mean stars you've never seen. The night sky until you've seen it from West Texas. No light pollution for miles. As I was spitting into the dirt, I heard the boots again. Far off at first. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I turned, toothbrush still in my mouth, and scanned the darkness. They got louder. Crunch, crunch. I ran back inside and locked the door. No joke, I sat in bed fully clothed with a flashlight in one hand and a knife in the other. The wind picked up around midnight, making the windows rattle. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was overtired or dehydrated. I made some instant coffee, packed my gear, and decided to go into the ghost town early before heading north. When I got back to the cemetery, it was already hot, like 95 degrees Fahrenheit and rising. I wandered around the ruins, snapping a few photos on my phone, and that's when I saw him, down past the cemetery and a little beyond the bar, near the crumbling remnants of the old post office. A man. At first, I thought he was a reenactor or something. He was wearing old-fashioned clothes, like 1800s prospector stuff. Dusty pants tucked into tall boots, suspenders, long-sleeved shirt, a wide hat pulled low. His head was tilted down, and he was just standing there. I walked a little closer, maybe 40 feet away. Something looked wrong. He was facing me, but his head was down, so I couldn't see his face. I tried to call out, "Hey, you okay?" No response. He raised his head, and my stomach dropped. He didn't have a face. I know how that sounds, but it's true. There were indentations where eyes and a mouth should have been, like you'd expect on a skull, but they were covered by skin. Wrinkled, sun-damaged skin, like old leather stretched over bone. No eyes, no nose, no expression. Just a faceless thing staring straight at me. But that wasn't the worst part. His boots, they weren't touching the ground. They hovered maybe half an inch above the dirt. I remember blinking hard, thinking it was a heat mirage, but it wasn't. The dust was undisturbed beneath his feet. He cast a shadow, but his boots DIDN single quotes T. Then he moved, not walked, just glided a few inches forward. I backed away fast, heart pounding in my throat. I turned and ran to my car without looking back. Slammed the door, locked it, and peeled out of there, heading straight for Alpine. No music, no podcasts. Just silence the whole drive. That night, I stayed at a motel. Crappy little place near a gas station, but I didn't care. I just wanted lights, people, anything. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a sound outside the motel window. Crunch, crunch, like boots on gravel. I didn't move. I just stared at the ceiling, listening. It stopped after a minute. I didn't sleep. Again, I never went back to Terlingua. I talked to a park ranger about it a few months later at a campsite in Big Bend. He asked where I'd stayed. I told him about the casita near the ghost town. He got real quiet. Then he said, "Some folks say there's a man out there. Wears old mining gear. No one sees his face. Walks the ruins at dusk." I asked him if he'd ever seen it. He shook his head, but didn't say no. Just said, "Tourists always think it's a costume, till they realize his boots don't touch the ground." I've had nightmares since. Always the same. I'm in the desert. It's sunset. I hear footsteps behind me. And when I turn around, there he is. Closer than before. Every time. Like he's getting somewhere. I don't tell this story to scare people. Honestly, I don't care if you believe me. But if you ever find yourself near Terlingua and you decide to walk the ruins alone, don't stop if you hear footsteps, and don't look back. I don't usually talk about this, not because I'm embarrassed, but because people always try to explain it away. They say it's stress or coincidence or that I just got things mixed up. I've had old friends look at me like I've lost it, but I know what I saw. I know what I've been part of. I used to drive for work a lot, freelance logistics consultant, which is just a fancy way of saying I bounced around from job to job in Texas, doing on-site audits for small trucking companies. That meant a lot of time on the road, especially between Dallas and Austin, and most of it on I-35. It started around September 2010. I remember the exact date because it was my mom's birthday, September 18th. I was headed south, leaving Waco around 4:30 in the afternoon, planning to make it to Buda by nightfall. Weather was that sticky, late summer heat, sun glaring right into your eyes like it hated you. I saw a guy on the side of the highway, just past the temple exit. He looked young, maybe early 20s, with a duffel bag and a flannel tied around his waist. I'm not the type to pick up hitchhikers, but I don't know. Something about him seemed familiar, like I'd seen him before. Maybe that made me trust him. He stuck out his thumb, and before I knew it, I was pulling onto the shoulder. He climbed in, thanked me, said he was heading to Austin. His voice was soft, kind of distant, like he was distracted. I asked if he was from around there, and he just shook his head. Didn't say much. Honestly, the ride was quiet. I remember thinking how polite he was. No smell, no weird vibes. I dropped him off near a gas station off Slaughter Lane. Around 6:30 p.m., he thanked me again and just walked off. The weird part didn't come until 2 weeks later. I was talking to a coworker in Austin who used to be a firefighter before he got into logistics. We got on the subject of car accidents. I guess it came up because of how crazy traffic gets on I-35. I mentioned I picked up a hitchhiker the other week and dropped him off in South Austin, and he sort of raised his eyebrow and asked what. The guy looked like, I gave a vague description, young, flannel shirt, short hair, duffel bag, and the guy just got real quiet. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me a news article from 2006. The headline said, "Local musician killed in fiery crash on I-35. The photo was grainy, but it was the same guy. Same face. Same clothes. Even the same duffel bag slung over his shoulder in the picture. I thought it was a joke at first. Or maybe he had a twin. But no, this guy, Dylan H., 22 years old, had died 4 years earlier in a 3-car pileup near Temple, right around where I picked up the hitchhiker. Died instantly, according to the report. Burned alive. I told myself it couldn't be. That maybe the guy I picked up just looked a lot like him. But then it happened again. A few months later, February 2011, I was heading down the same stretch of highway. Cold night, windy. I had just passed the Belton area when I saw another person on the shoulder. This time it was a woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing a windbreaker and jeans. She had that same kind of distant look in her eyes, like she was halfway somewhere else. Again, without really thinking about it, I pulled over and let her in, she said. She was heading to Kyle, and again, the ride was mostly quiet. She sat still the whole time, hands in her lap, barely blinking. I remember she smelled like rain, even though it hadn't rained in days. Dropped her off at a Valero just past Yarrington Road. She gave a little wave and walked toward the gas station, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, she wasn't there. I even looped back around, nothing. It was like she vanished. That night I couldn't sleep. Something about the whole thing stuck with me. I ended up Googling woman accident Kyle, Texas, and after maybe 15 minutes of digging, I found an obituary.erica lane. Guide February 2008. Car flipped over the median during a sudden cold snap, hit another vehicle head-on, killed on impact. The photo in the obituary showed her in the same blue windbreaker. I wish I could say those were the only two, but they weren't. Since 2010, I've picked up 7 hitchhikers between Waco and Austin. Every one of them had that same soft campfire demeanor. They were never talkative, never nervous. And everyone matched a fatal accident victim from the past 10 or 15 years. Same names, same clothes, same exact spot on the highway where their crashes happened. I started keeping a journal about them. Times, dates, what they looked like, where I picked them up and dropped them off. I've even tried to avoid the highway, taken side roads, but somehow I always end up back on 35. Sometimes I don't even remember changing routes. It's like I wake up and I'm already pulling over. I know what you're probably thinking. Maybe I've got some kind of obsession. Maybe I'm unconsciously recreating things. But here's the thing, they know me now. A few weeks ago, July 17th, 2025, I was heading to visit a client near San Marcos. I hadn't seen anything unusual in months. I thought maybe it was finally over. But just before the Loop 82 exit, I saw someone standing by the guardrail. A man in his 50s. He was holding a cowboy hat, had a busted boot like it had been ripped open. He didn't even raise his thumb. Just stood there. This time I didn't stop, but when I looked in the mirror, he was already sitting in the back seat. I slammed the brakes and swerved onto the shoulder. The seat was empty. I was alone. That night I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not on my door, on my bedroom window. 3 knocks, then silence. I live on the 2nd floor. I didn't look. I couldn't. The next morning I checked my journal. I always keep it in the drawer beside my bed. There was a new page. No handwriting. Just a Polaroid photo of me, driving, looking into the rearview mirror, my eyes wide. Behind me in the photo, sitting in the back seat, were all of them. Every hitchhiker, staring right at the camera. I don't know what they want. I don't know why me. Maybe I picked up someone I wasn't supposed to, and now I've become something else, a carrier. A route they remember. A ride they never finished. I've stopped driving south altogether now. Haven't touched I-35 in months, but sometimes I'll glance at my rear view while I'm on the road just out of habit, and every once in a while, I catch a reflection of someone back there, someone I didn't pick up. I used to think the stories were just that, stories. Urban legends to keep bored teenagers busy during the long, hot summers in southern Texas. Macallan gets unbearable in July. The heat gets into everything, your clothes, your car seats, that inside of your skull. So it makes sense, I guess. that kids would latch on to the idea of a place that's cold. Freezing cold. It started as a dare. Like most dumb ideas do. My friend Danny had just come back from a semester at UT Austin and wanted to prove how much braver he'd become, or whatever. We were sitting in my truck outside a 24-hour Whataburger around 1:30 a.m. The air was still thick and sweaty, even that late. I was halfway through a milkshake when he brought it up. "You ever heard of the frozen church?" I rolled my eyes. "What, like a haunted place that's cold in McAllen? You know, it was still 97 degrees at midnight last night, right?" "No, seriously," he said, leaning in like he was about to share some classified info. "It's out past the old citrus groves. There's this abandoned church. Brick, no roof. Locals say every July it drops to below freezing inside. Doesn't matter how hot it is outside." I laughed. "Sure, and I bet it's also built on an ancient burial ground and Satan himself moonlights as the preacher." But Danny wasn't smiling. "I'm serious. My cousin went last year. He said there were carvings in the pews. All the same phrase over and over again, like someone went psycho with a knife. Latin or something. What did they say?" He hesitated for a second. Then, "Ili numquam decesserunt." "They never left," I said automatically. I took Latin for 2 years in high school. I mostly just remember how to conjugate verbs and ask where the bathroom is, but that phrase stuck with me. He looked at me like I'd confirmed something he hadn't wanted confirmed. "Yeah, that." At first, I brushed it off. McAllen has more ghost stories than bars, and that's saying something. But over the next week, I started looking into it. Just for fun. There wasn't much online. A couple Reddit threads, one local. Blog from 2012 that had been deleted but still showed up in cache search results. It mentioned a Cappella del Silencio, Chapel of Silence, supposedly used by migrant workers in the early 1900s. One entry said the roof caved in during a summer service, killing several parishioners. The church was never rebuilt. That blog had a blurry photo, mostly grain, but you could make out what looked like stone pews and a collapsed altar. I don't know what made me actually go. Boredom, probably. That, and the way Danny kept dodging my text about it after that night. He'd talk about other stuff, football, classes, even his ex, but whenever I brought up the church, he'd say, "Nah, man, forget it," so I didn't tell anyone when I went. Didn't want a whole group of people turning it into a joke. I just told my folks I was working late and drove out there on a Wednesday night around 11:45 p.m. I used Google Maps and a few vague blog directions to get there. Past a line of old citrus groves, down a dirt road that was barely wide enough for my truck. No lights, no houses. Just trees and insects and that awful, oppressive heat. And then, like it was just waiting for me, the church. It didn't look like much at first. A crumbling shell of red brick, half covered in vines. No roof, like Danny said. There were no signs, no fences, not even a no trespassing warning. Just an open doorway that looked more like a mouth than anything else. I stepped inside it. Exactly 12:03 a.m., and the second I crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped. I don't mean it got cooler. I mean I could see my breath. The sweat on my arms turned cold. My skin prickled like I just stepped into a freezer. I stood there, shivering in shorts and a t-shirt, trying to understand what I was feeling. The walls were intact, but the ceiling was just open sky. The moonlight lit everything in pale blue. Dust floated in the air like ash. There were pews. Real wooden pews, even though the rest of the church was stone. Rotten, cracked, but still standing in rows. I walked down the aisle slowly, my shoes crunching on loose gravel and what I think were old, frozen leaves. Then I saw the carvings. They were exactly as Danny described. Deep, obsessive scratches into the pews. Each one read the same, Ili Num Quam, Decessorant, over and over. Sometimes neat, sometimes jagged like they'd been done in a hurry or under duress. On the backs of the pews, on the seats, even on the floor in front of the altar. I remember whispering the phrase without thinking. They never left. And then, something strange happened. I thought I heard someone whisper it back. It wasn't. Loud, barely audible, like someone echoing me from way in the back. But when I turned around, there was no one. I told myself it was the wind. That maybe the cold was getting to my head. I'd seen survival shows where people start hallucinating when they get hypothermia. But the thing is, my phone still said it was 96 degrees outside. And no one else was around. I took out my phone and tried to record a video just to prove I hadn't imagined it. But the moment I hit record, the screen glitched green static, like a broken VHS. It wouldn't stop until I closed the camera. Then I heard the whisper again. This time it was closer and louder. They never left. I froze. It didn't sound like one voice now. It sounded like several, overlapping. Men and women, all whispering the same phrase like a chant. I turned and walked quickly, but not running toward the entrance. But as I reached the door, I felt a pressure in the air, like the moment before a storm hits. Heavy, electric. And then I saw them. Silhouettes. Just barely visible in the back rows. Standing between the pews, not moving, just watching. The moment I saw them, they didn't vanish. They didn't attack. They just stayed there. Dozens of them. Frozen in place. I blinked. Gone. I ran. I don't remember getting back to my truck. I barely remember the drive home. But I remember checking the time when I pulled into my driveway. 12:29 a.m. I had only been in the church for 26 minutes. Didn't sleep that night. I couldn't shake the cold. My skin burned with goosebumps. For hours. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not even Danny. But a few days later, I got a text from him. Just 2 words. They followed? I never responded. That was 4 summers ago. Every July since then, I feel it. The cold. No matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, there will be a moment sometimes, just a few minutes, where I can see my breath again, where my bones ache from cold, even if the sun is blazing outside. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear that whisper again. They never left. I think maybe, neither did I. I never thought I'd write this down. My wife keeps telling me to forget about it, and for the most part, I've tried. But I still wake up sometimes around 3:47 a.m. same minute, every damn time soaked in sweat, waiting for something. Can't name to creak up the stairs. I know it sounds dramatic. Hell, maybe it is. But if you lived in that house, even for a week, you'd understand. This happened back in 2019. We just bought this old house in Galveston, Texas. 1924 build. Classic Gulf Coast style, big windows, wide porches, salt-stained shutters. It had survived multiple hurricanes and still stood solid, which, in hindsight, should have been my first clue that it was the kind of house that doesn't let go of things easily. We got it cheap. Like, suspiciously cheap. But Galveston's full of these old homes that need work. People don't like the upkeep, especially in hurricane territory. My wife, Erin, had always wanted a fixer-upper, and I was in a weird phase of my life where I thought swinging a sledgehammer would somehow fix everything wrong in my head. So we went for it, closed on it in August. It was sweltering that day, 103 degrees. I remember because the realtor looked like she was going to melt in her blazer. She was nice enough, though she kept glancing over my shoulder every time I turned to look at a room. Like she didn't want to meet my eyes. I chalked it up to heat stroke or nerves. Erin was obsessed with the place. It has soul, she said. Yeah, that it did. The weirdness didn't start right away. We moved in a week later with only the bare essentials. Mattress on the floor, fan in the window, coolers instead of a fridge while we got appliances sorted. The plan was to renovate slowly room by room, mostly cosmetic stuff at first. Floors, drywall, paint. A new kitchen eventually. The bones were good, or so we thought. The first thing I noticed maybe 2 nights in was the quiet. Like a wrong kind of quiet. Galveston has these bugs, you know? Cicadas, tree frogs, night sounds. But around our block, it just stopped. You'd step off the sidewalk and hear nothing but the house breathing around you. I joked about it to Erin. Said maybe the bugs knew something we didn't. She didn't laugh out. By mid-September. We started tearing up the flooring in the dining room. It had that old, cracked linoleum with a weird yellow tint like nicotine stains. Underneath, there was original hardwood worn but beautiful. We were thrilled until we hit the corner near the built-in hutch. The board sounded hollow. Not like crawl space hollow, like room hollow. I thought maybe there was old ductwork or insulation gaps, but the knocking sound was weirdly deep. So, I got curious. YouTube tutorials gave me just enough confidence to pry a few boards up without ruining the rest of the floor. That was around 2 p.m. on a Sunday. Erin was out running errands. I remember the smell hit first damp, stale, sweet and sour at the same time, like mildew and rotting flowers. Then I saw it. A wooden panel, almost perfectly square, maybe 3 feet across. With a rusted iron ring set into a dot, it was a trapdoor. No hinges on our side. No light, just old wood and darkness. When Erin got back, I showed her. She was creeped out, but also fascinated. We both were. It was like we discovered a secret chamber, some Prohibition-era wine cellar or something. We didn't open it. Right away. It felt wrong somehow. Like it had waited too long to be opened and now it didn't want to be. 2 days later, we gave in. We pulled it up with a crowbar and I lowered my phone in on video mode with the flashlight on. We watched the screen as the light panned across a room, like an actual room. Not just a crawl space. It had walls, a ceiling, shelves. Everything was covered in dust, but it was intact. There was no staircase. Just a 6-foot drop into the dark dot. We brought down a ladder the next day. The air that came out of that hole was freezing. Mid-September in Texas, and it was like opening a freezer. I went down first, though every part of me was screaming not to. The space was maybe 12 by 10 feet, completely sealed off. Wood-paneled. Walls. A tiny desk in one corner, a lamp with no bulb, a stack of what looked like wedding magazines from the 1950s, and in the middle hung from a beam in the ceiling was a wedding dress. It wasn't on a hanger. It wasn't on a mannequin. It was tied up, hanging by the shoulders, suspended in midair like someone had tried to make it stand like a person. And the bottom of it, white tulle stained a sickly brown, almost touched the floor. But not quite. I turned to call for Erin and my light flicked off. Not like the phone died, just the light. Pitch black. I scrambled back up the ladder without looking back. She met me at the top, freaked out by how pale I was. I told her I'd show her the video, but when I checked my phone, the video was just static. Audio too. Just that low hiss of dead air, like an old TV on a channel that doesn't exist anymore. We nailed the trapdoor shut that night. Didn't talk about it again. I told myself we'd stumbled on some creepy storage space. Maybe someone had a breakdown, made themselves a little bunker, or hell, maybe it was some old teenager's hideout, but I couldn't stop dreaming about it. Not nightmares, exactly. Just being in that room again, over and over, but never alone. I could never see her clearly. Just the shape of her, standing where the dress had been hanging, arms by her sides, head tilted too far to the left. The worst part was, she never did anything. Just stood there, like she was waiting for me to speak first. Things started going wrong around the house after that. Little things at first, items disappearing and turning up in weird places. Aaron's keys found under the floor vent. A kitchen drawer opening in the middle of the night. The smell of perfume floral, too sweet, drifting through the living room when no windows were open. One night, I woke up to Aaron standing by the bedroom window, just standing there. When I called her name, she didn't respond. When I got up and touched her arm, she blinked and asked why I was waking her. She had no memory of getting out of bed. I asked her jokingly, "Were you dreaming about the woman under the floor?" She got dead quiet and left the room. She didn't laugh, didn't say a word for hours. The last night we spent in that house, we just finished dinner. It was raining hard. Around 10:30 p.m. the power went out. Just a flicker, then darkness. No thunder, no wind. I lit some candles while Aaron got the flashlight. I heard her go to the dining room to check the breaker. Then I heard her scream. I ran in and saw the trapdoor was open again. Boards splintered around it like something had forced its way up. Aaron was shaking, pointing down with the flashlight. The dress was gone. That was it for me. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't want one. We left the house that night with whatever we could carry. We stayed at a motel off Seawall Boulevard and put the place up for sale a week later. Didn't tell the realtor. Didn't mention the room. The new owners moved in sometime in early 2020. I drove by once. Just once. The windows were all covered. The yard had gone wild. And on the upstairs window, the one that looked into our old bedroom, I saw something hanging. Not a person. Not clearly, just something white, billowing slightly, even though there was no wind. I haven't driven by since. Haven't gone back to Galveston. But sometimes at night, I still smell that perfume. And every now and then, just for a second, I feel the floor under me give, like something underneath is shifting, watching. Waiting. I don't expect anyone to believe me. Honestly, I wouldn't believe me either. And I'm not here to convince you, I just need to get it out. Writing it down, I guess, helps me feel like I'm putting it somewhere else, like maybe it'll stop following me if I keep telling myself it was just one night and not whatever it feels like now. This happened 3 years ago, in September. I was 22 at the time, in my last semester at Denton, Texas. My roommate Jesse and I were both into urban legends and creepy stuff, not in a let's summon demons kind of way. But we'd go on weird little road trips to haunted places around Texas, record stuff, post it on this YouTube channel we were trying to grow. Nothing serious. Mostly dumb commentary, shaky iPhone footage, occasional creaks and "did you hear that?" moments. Nothing ever really happened. Until we went to Old Alton Bridge. Locals call it Goatman's Bridge. If you're from the area, you've probably heard the stories. Some say it was a black goat farmer who was lynched there in the 1930s by the Klan. Others say he made a deal with the devil. Whatever the origin, the legend says if you park on the bridge at night, turn off your lights, and wait, you'll hear hooves approaching. But people say they don't sound like hooves. They say it sounds like hands slapping the pavement. Fast. It was Jesse's idea. September 14th, a Thursday. It was still hot that day, like 90 degrees when the sun was up. But by the time we left our place around 10:30 p.m., it had dropped to the low 70s. I remember because I debated wearing shorts, but the humidity was disgusting, and there were mosquitoes the size of nickels swarming our parking lot. We brought the usual stuff. 2 flashlights, the GoPro, a small handheld mic, extra batteries, and Jesse's shitty Canon. No EMF readers or Ouija boards or anything like that. We weren't Ghost hunters. We were just bored college kids who like scaring ourselves. It took about 20 minutes to get there. The closer we got, the quieter everything seemed. Jesse was cracking jokes, but I noticed how dark it was. You know, that kind of dark that doesn't feel natural. Not like it's night, but like you're under something. Like the stars are behind a curtain. There were no other cars. No sounds really, just the tires crunching gravel when we turned onto Old Alton Road. It's all trees. Out there. You wouldn't know a college town was just a few miles away. It felt like we drove back in time. When we saw the bridge, Jesse turned to me and grinned. You ready for hoovy hands? I didn't laugh. I don't know why. The name was dumb, but something about it got under my skin. I felt uneasy, not scared, exactly, but alert. Like my body knew something I didn't. He killed the engine at exactly 11:08 p.m. I remember because I checked my phone. We sat there for a minute, windows down, engine ticking as it cooled. The cicadas had stopped. That was the first weird thing. Normally they're deafening out there. But that night, nothing. Just a soft breeze that smelled like pond water and iron. We waited. 10 minutes, 15, no noises. Jesse yawned and leaned his head back against the seat. Guess the Goatman's on break. Then we heard it, not hooves. Not even footsteps. It was soft at first, like something crawling or dragging. But it got louder fast, and it was coming from behind us. Like something moving across the bridge's wooden slats. It didn't sound like hooves. It didn't echo. It was a sharp, wet slap, like bare hands hitting concrete. Jesse bolted upright and looked at me. Dude, are you hearing that? I didn't answer. I was frozen. The sound stopped maybe 10 feet behind the car. Jesse reached for the ignition, but the engine wouldn't turn over. Just this sick grinding click. Are you kidding me right now? He muttered, trying again. Click, click, click. We didn't look back. I don't know why. I think we both just knew we shouldn't. Then we heard it again, the slapping. But this time it came from the front of the car. As if it had gone under us. My stomach dropped. I mean literally dropped. Like hitting turbulence. I could feel it in my teeth. Jesse turned on the flashlight and pointed it out the windshield, but there was nothing there. Then we both heard it. A voice, very quiet, like someone standing right next to the car, whispering through cupped hands. It said, "You shouldn't have come." That was enough. Jesse opened the door and ran. Just took off into the trees to the left of the bridge. I screamed after him, but I didn't want to leave the car. I was shaking, hands numb. The only thing I could hear now was my heartbeat. Then suddenly, everything was loud again. Cicadas, night birds, crickets. Like a switch flipped. The engine started on the first try. I drove off that bridge like a bat out of hell, tires skidding on the gravel. I had no idea where Jesse went. I called him probably 20 times, straight to voicemail. I called the cops at 11:41 p.m. They found him about 2 hours later, lying in a shallow creek about 100 yards from the bridge. He was conscious but wouldn't speak. They said he had no injuries, no signs of trauma, no drugs in his system. Just shock. He didn't talk for 3 days. When he finally did, all he said was, "It doesn't walk. It crawls. It wants you to hear it." He never explained. And he wouldn't go near anything paranormal again. Deleted our YouTube channel. Moved back to Lubbock a month later and dropped out. I've had nightmares every few weeks since then. Always the same thing. I'm stuck in the car, on the bridge, and I hear it. The hands. Only now they don't stop outside the car. I hear them inside. Slapping the roof, the seats, the dashboard. I wake up drenched in sweat. The weirdest part? My audio recorder was running the whole time. I'd stuffed it in the glove box when we parked. I forgot it was even on. When I finally worked up the nerve to listen back, I didn't hear footsteps or slaps. What I heard was breathing heavy, slow, and close, as if something had been sitting in the back seat the entire time. For 26 minutes. And right at the end of the recording, just before the engine finally started, a low voice, almost too quiet to catch, says, "Now you've heard me. I don't know what we found out there. I don't care anymore. But if you ever go to Goatman's Bridge, and I'm begging you, don't, whatever you do, don't listen too closely." I'm not sure who needs to hear this. Maybe no one. But it's been chewing at the back of my mind for years now, and lately it's been getting worse. I'm a long-haul trucker. Have been for most of my adult life. I've seen my share of weird. Crap on the road, flickering lights in the sky, people standing on the side of desolate highways at 3 a.m. with no car in sight, the usual campfire stuff we laugh about in diners, but this wasn't like that. This stuck. I was doing a run from El Paso to Odessa back in late November 2017. The company I drove for at the time was strict on deadlines, and had gotten delayed leaving El Paso traffic from a rollover on I-10. Of all things. I didn't hit the open stretch until after 9 p.m. If you've never driven that route at night, you might not understand how empty it feels. It's just miles and miles of cracked desert highway, scrub brush, distant oil rigs blinking, like dying stars. Cell signal cuts out halfway through, and even the truck's GPS gets iffy. It was around 11:45 p.m. when I started flipping through radio stations to stay awake. My usual podcasts weren't loading, and I didn't want to risk dozing off. I like oldies, but the stations kept fading to static. I was about halfway between Van Horn and Fort Stockton when I stumbled on something weird. I was turning the knob real slow, trying to find anything with a strong signal, when I hit a station that came in perfectly, like unnaturally clear. 104.3 FM. I remember the exact number because I even said it out loud, like, what the hell's broadcasting way out here? There was no music, just this VOICEA man mid-sermon. Slow, deep southern drawl. Not yelling, not fire and brimstone. Calm, almost hypnotic. He was talking about sin, but not in the usual way. No Bible verses. No mention of Christ or salvation. Just sign in a real abstract way. Like how sin lives in silence. How it hides in the hollow space between thoughts. That kind of thing. I thought it was a local preacher doing a late-night broadcast. Maybe an AM signal bleeding over. I listened for about 10 minutes. Then the voice just stopped. Not cut off, just stopped. Like he ran out of words mid-sentence. Then silence. No music, no outro, no call sign. Just dead air. I checked the dial. Still on 104.3. A minute later, static kicked in and it faded out. I didn't think much of it. Figured it was a fluke, some low-range signal bouncing off a rig tower or something. But about 20 miles later, just past a rest stop near Bakersfield, I started hearing it again. Same frequency, same voice. But this time, it was a different sermon. This one was darker. He talked about walking men without faces and deserts that never forget. I remember that line because it hit me weird. The preacher said something like, "A sin left unburied will learn to walk. It'll wear your father's voice. It'll crawl through the airwaves till it finds you." The hair on my arm stood. I turned the volume down, but the voice kept playing. Not through the speakers, through the cab. I know how that sounds. I know. But it was like he was inside the truck, whispering behind the vents. I pulled over, heart pounding, and killed. The engine silence. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, trying to calm down. Told myself it was just fatigue. Audio hallucinations are common in long-haul drivers. I even texted my buddy, Rick, another trucker I met in the service years back, just to stay grounded. Told him I was hearing weird stuff. He said, "You're probably picking up ghost stations. Texas is full of them." I asked what he meant. He said, "Some truckers talk about a station out past Marfa that plays dead preachers on a loop. Been off air since the 70s, but the signal's still out there. Stronger the deeper you go into the desert." I laughed it off. Tried to get moving again, but the signal wouldn't go away. Even with the radio off, even with the antenna unplugged. 104.3 came in clear. Every time I stopped the truck, it played sermons. Always different. Always the same voice, calm, patient, like it knew I was listening. At 2:07 a.m., I passed a sign that just said, "Welcome to Mercy." Black letters on a white board. No town listed on the map. Nothing on the GPS. I slowed down, thinking it might be a rest town or fuel stop, but there were no lights. No houses. No roads branching off. Just desert. As I passed the sign, the preacher's voice changed. He started speaking directly to me. I don't mean in the vague, some of you might be struggling with sin kind of way. I mean, he said my name, first and last, then my truck number. Then the name of my daughter who doesn't even live in Texas. He said, "You ain't been sleeping, right, Mark? Not since the river. That's because you left something behind. Something that crawled into your bones." My hands were shaking so bad I almost ran off the road. I pulled over again. This time I left the headlights on, opened the door, and stepped out into the dirt. Cold wind, stars, nothing else. My phone was dead, just black screen, even though it was at 40% a half hour earlier, and the preacher was still talking. Loud and clear. No speakers. It was coming from everywhere. I looked around and saw these shapes in the distance, tall and still. Maybe a dozen of them. Thought they were mesquite trees. But then one of them moved. Just a shift of the shoulder. A subtle lean. Like it had been watching me. That's when the preacher said, "They've come to collect what's theirs." I slammed the door, floored it, and didn't stop until I hit the outskirts of Odessa. It was nearly 4 a.m. by then. My phone powered back on like nothing happened. 40% battery, full signal. 104.3 was gone. Nothing on that frequency but static now. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. Told Rick the whole story over coffee a week later. He just nodded, like he'd heard it all before. Sighed, "You ever go past Van Horn again, don't follow that signal. Don't talk back to it. Just let it play." I asked him what he meant by talk back. He didn't answer. I've taken a different route ever since. I don't even go into West Texas unless I absolutely have to. But here's the thing. Every now and then, usually late at night, I'll scan the dial just out of habit. And once in a while, 104.3 comes in just for a second. Just long enough for that slow, patient voice to whisper, "Still driven, Mark? Still listening?" And then it's gone. I don't know what the hell I heard out there. I don't know if it was a ghost signal, a hallucination, or something older than both. All I know is this: there's a station in the desert that doesn't want to be found, but if you do, it won't forget you. I don't expect anyone to believe this. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't been there. But every now and then, especially when the wind dies down and the insects go quiet, I swear I still hear it, just beneath everything else. Like a voice from somewhere far away, calling out a name I know too well. This happened in 2017 in Bowie County, Texas. I was 25 at the time, working odd jobs and staying in a half-renovated rental house out past Sims off FM 990. Probably wouldn't know the area unless you grew up around there. It's a quiet place. Wide roads, slow talkers, and a whole lot of nothing. I had taken up work with an older guy named Hank. helping him fix fencing and tend to the property on his cousin's old farm. It was mostly overgrown and forgotten, about 40 acres of dead. Trees, rusted-out equipment, and a half-collapsed barn. Hank was decent enough, but a little strange. You could tell something had worn him down long ago. Anyway, one of the fields on the property sat at the edge of a wheat patch that had gone completely feral. It was about a mile or so deep into the property, dry golden stalks that came up to your chest. Not neatly planted, just growing wild, like it had been left alone for years. I first noticed it on a walk back from the tree line after we'd been cutting dead limbs. It was weird because it didn't move like the rest of the grass around it. The air was still, no breeze at all, and yet the wheat swayed slightly, like it was breathing. I remember asking Hank about it. He stopped what he was doing, looked out toward the field, then went right back to hammering the fence without answering. That silence should have told me something. The next day I brought it up again, just kind of joking around. "Hey, what's the deal with the wheat field back there? Looks haunted." He didn't laugh, just said, "Don't go in there," and then added, "Especially not at night." When I pressed him, he finally told me they called it the Whisper Field. Said that years ago, before his cousin stopped tending the land, people started saying it was ... and off. Local kids claimed they heard voices if they stood near the edge. Not yelling or crying, just whispers, like someone talking through a wall. He told me a story about an old farmer, Calvin Boone, who supposedly lived nearby and tried to record the sound. The man hanged himself in his shed a week later, Hank said, lighting a cigarette with a shaking hand. Burned the damn tape before he did it. I laughed nervously and asked him if that was just some local legend to keep teenagers from trespassing. He didn't answer, but he didn't smile either. I think that scared me more than if he'd made something up. That should have been the end of it. I should have just gone on with the job and stayed away from that part of the property. But there's something about a story like that, it lingers. You find yourself thinking about it during quiet moments. And every time I passed that stretch of land, I'd notice the field just ... humming. Not audibly, not like an engine or anything. Just this strange tension in the air. Like something was always watching. It all came to a head about 3 weeks in. It was a Thursday, August 24th. I remember because it was hot as hell, even for Texas, around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. No clouds, no wind. Just that thick, breathless kind of heat that makes your skin stick to everything. I finished work early and went home to shower. I tried to read, maybe even sleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about the field. That evening, around 7:45, I decided I'd walk back out there, just to take a closer look. I told myself it was curiosity, but in hindsight, it felt more like something wanted me to. I brought a flashlight, but it was still pretty bright out. The sky was starting to go that pale orange color, and long shadows were creeping across the field. The wheat looked different, denser, like it had grown since the last time I saw it. I walked up to the edge, stopped, and listened. Nothing. Then, just as I turned to leave, I heard it, a whisper. So faint, I thought it was a trick of the wind. "Hey." I froze. It came again. Same voice, male, soft. "Hey. It wasn't angry or threatening, just ... neutral. But the weirdest part was that it sounded like it came from inside my head, but also from the middle of the field. Like the voice was standing 50 feet away, whispering straight into my brain. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, heart pounding, skin cold despite the heat. I told myself I imagined it, turned around, and walked away as quickly as I could without looking like I was running. I didn't go back to work the next day. I texted Hank and said I wasn't feeling well. He never replied. That night I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice. The way it said, "Hey," like it knew me. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Can you hear me now?" I didn't respond. I turned my phone off, tossed it across the room, and sat on the couch until the sun came up. I planned to leave town the next day. I started packing that morning, but around 10:30 a.m., someone knocked on my door. Not once or twice, 6 times, evenly spaced. Knock, 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 knock. I froze. Didn't move. My heart was pounding in my ears. Then the knocking stopped, and I heard someone say my name. Not shout it, say it, like they were reading it off a page. Eric. Just once. Clear as day. I didn't open the door. Didn't even check the peephole. I just sat there, holding my breath. After a minute or two, I grabbed my bag, climbed out the back window, and drove straight to a friend's place in Texarkana. I didn't tell them why I was there, just said I needed a place for a few days. I slept with the lights on. 2 days later, I heard Hank died. Heart attack, they said. In his truck, just a mile from the property. His phone was found on the passenger seat. The last audio recording was just ... static. But if you turn the volume up, and I mean all the way, you can barely make something out beneath the noise. It says my name. I've moved 3 times since then. Changed numbers. Deleted all my social media. I haven't been back to Bowie County in years. But even now, every so often, I'll be walking down the street or sitting at a red light, and I'll feel that same hum, like the air's pressing in too tight, like something is standing just behind me, waiting for me to listen. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I'll hear it again. Soft, patient, just one word, Eric. I don't care if you believe me. Just ... If you're ever out near Bowie County and you see a field that looks a little too still, a little too quiet, don't stop. Don't listen. Keep walking. And whatever you do, don't say your name out loud. It's been over 15 years, but I still think about it almost every day. The smell of the wet concrete, the way the rain pooled around the gutters, how quiet the street felt afterward. I was 12. We lived just outside Houston, Texas. A cul-de-sac in a neighborhood that was barely finished. Back when they were still throwing up cookie-cutter houses on plots of red clay and calling them subdivisions. This was before everything got swallowed up by the bigger city. Back then, we still had long stretches of ditch and empty lots between the homes. That summer was brutally hot, but the rain came in weird, sudden bursts. I remember the day it started. Late July, I was on my bike with 2 of the neighborhood kids, Mikey and Jamal, riding loops around the court, daring each other to skid harder, closer to the curb. At some point we started hearing it. It was Mikey who first noticed. He stopped, kicked his sneaker against the storm drain at the edge of the street, and said, "Do y'all hear that?" At first we didn't. I thought he was just trying to be creepy. But then, as we got closer, crouched down near the grate, we did. It was a voice. Quiet, almost like someone humming, but there were words in there. Faint. I couldn't make them out clearly, but the tone made my stomach twist. Not because it was loud or threatening, it wasn't. It was gentle, soft, like someone trying not to wake a baby. Mikey leaned in closer, face almost against the bars. "Hello?" He called down. We waited. Silence. Then a voice answered. "Hello." I remember Jamal backing up, immediately freaked out. "Dude, what the hell was that?" "It's probably just an echo," Mikey said, but he didn't sound sure. He was still staring into the grate. Or maybe one of the kids from down the street's messing with us. But no one else was around. The street was dead quiet. Everyone else stayed inside during the rain because the mosquitoes were terrible. And the air stuck to your skin like syrup. We went home after that, but something had changed. The next day, more kids were talking about it. Not just us, some of the younger kids too. They said they heard singing coming from the drains. One girl, Samira, said it sounded like a lullaby, but the words were all wrong, like someone made them up in their sleep, she told us. Another kid swore he heard someone calling his name. It became a kind of dare, a game. Who could get closest? Who could stay the longest, listening? Mikey, of course, wanted to crawl in. There was a larger opening a few blocks away, one of those drainage tunnels that fed into the bayou. We all knew where it was. We used to dare each other to go inside for a few seconds before running out screaming like idiots. The thing is, no one ever stayed long. Something about it felt wrong. Anyway, one cloudy afternoon, around 5:40 p.m., Mikey said he was going in. I still remember the time because I checked my phone when he said it, like if I knew the exact moment, it would somehow help make sense of it later. It had rained earlier, just enough to soak the ground, but not enough to flood the tunnels. That's what he said. Perfect timing. I told him not to. So did Jamal. But Mikey had this look in his eye like he had to know. Like it wasn't. Just curiosity. It was obsession. We followed him to the big drain just in case. Mikey wore his red Adidas sneakers and carried one of those little handheld flashlights you get from the hardware store. He made us swear we wouldn't follow him in, no matter what. He said he'd only be gone 5 minutes. He never came back out. We waited for an hour. First we called his name. Then we yelled it. Eventually we ran to Jamal's house and told his mom everything. Cops came. Neighbors poured out into the street. It was a whole thing, sirens, caution tape, floodlights. They searched the tunnel all night. They found the flashlight a few yards in, flickering in the water. They found Mikey's shoes about 20 feet down, just sitting there, side by side, as if he'd stepped out of them. That was it. No blood, no drag marks, no signs of animal attack. The drain didn't lead anywhere else. It was a closed system until it hit the main bayou, and that was heavily gated. They checked every possible outlet. Brought in dogs, nothing. I remember Mikey's mom screaming. That still rings in my ears. The sound of it was worse than anything else. For weeks after, kids stopped going near the drains. The city sealed up a few of them, especially the bigger ones. But it didn't matter. The whispers kept going. Now, here's the part that still messes with me. About a week later, I was walking home from school. I took a shortcut that passed one of the older drains, half covered in vines and rust. It had rained again that day. I wasn't thinking. I was just trying to get home fast. But I swear to God, as I passed by, I heard it. My name, just once. In that same soft voice, not angry, not rushed, just waiting. Hey, I didn't look down. I ran. I started hearing things at night too. Little knocks, tapping against the bathtub drain or the floor vent in my room. Sometimes it sounded like someone breathing under the house. My mom said it was just old plumbing, but it didn't sound like plumbing. Sometimes, in dreams, I'd see Mikey. He'd be barefoot, walking down a wet tunnel, water up to his ankles, mouth open like he was screaming, but I couldn't hear a sound. We moved a year later. Lots of people did. The neighborhood never quite filled up. Some of the homes stayed vacant for years. I went back once, maybe 10 years later, to see it again. The big drain was welded shut. A fence around it, weeds taller than me. But even from the street, I swear I could hear it. Not loud, just a hum, like someone singing to themselves, just out of sight. I still don't know what happened to Mikey. No one does. But sometimes, and I know this sounds insane, sometimes when I'm alone in the shower or lying in bed late at night, I hear the water move a certain way, like it's shifting to make room for something. And then I remember his shoes side by side waiting for the rest of him to come back, or maybe for someone else to come in. I'm not from El Paso originally. I moved there in early 2019 after getting a job transfer from Phoenix. I was working security for a logistics company, night shifts mostly, decent pay, quiet work. I didn't know anyone in town when I arrived. My apartment was on the east side near Montana Avenue, not far from a strip of dusty warehouses and storage facilities. The first time I heard someone mention the red fog was at a Circle K, of all places. I'd stopped in for a coffee on my way to work around 10:45 p.m. This old guy at the register, gray beard, had one cloudy eye. He was talking to the cashier about the fog coming early that year. I figured it was just some weird West Texas weather. The desert does strange things at night, but I remember exactly what he said as I passed him. He looked at me real direct and said, "Hope you ain't planning to be outside if it rolls in. Folks like you don't make it through." I thought he meant new folks because I still had Arizona plates. I just gave a polite laugh, paid for my coffee, and left. But that line stuck with me. It happened that same week. Thursday night, October 17th, 2019. I was driving to work, same route I always took. The sky had this strange, bruised, purple-gray clouds hanging low. It was around 10:20 p.m. when I noticed a weird redness in the distance. At first, I thought it was the city lights bouncing off the clouds, but this wasn't like that. It wasn't above, it was near the ground. A red haze, low and thick, like smoke but smoother somehow. By the time I pulled up to the warehouse, the fog was everywhere. Not just a mist either. This stuff was dense, like standing inside a lit cigarette filter. Except it didn't smell like smoke. No smell at all, actually. The air just felt wrong. Too still. Even the usual hum of insects was gone. No crickets. No coyotes. Not even the wind that normally kicks up sand at night. Just nothing. It felt like the world had been paused. I parked and sat in the car for a minute. My phone said 10:32 p.m. I took a video to show the guys at work how weird it looked. But when I checked the recording, it was just black, no sound, no visuals. I tried again. Same result. That was the first time I really felt afraid. Inside the warehouse, everything was quiet. I did a walk-through, checking the docks, the storage units, the back offices. The red fog had made its way through the cracks in the loading doors, curling like veins across the concrete floor. Then I noticed something strange with the clocks. The one in the break room read 10:34 p.m. The one in the office, 10:34. My phone, 10:34. I sat down thinking maybe I was just tired. But when I checked again, 10 minutes later, it still said 10:34. It wasn't just the time. The power was acting strange too. The overhead lights were flickering slow, like they were underwater. And the cameras, none of the monitors were showing feed. Just static. Then I saw someone. It was just a glimpse at first. Through the plastic strips that hang between the loading area and the back hallway. A figure, standing still. I thought maybe one of the other guards had shown up early or was checking on something. I called out, "Marco?" Nothing. I walked closer. The strip swaying a little from the movement. When I pushed through, the hallway was empty. I checked the supply room, the janitor closet, even the emergency exit. Nobody. That was when I remembered what the old man had said. I went back to the break room and locked the door. I don't know why. I just felt like I had to. I turned off the lights and sat in the corner, trying to calm down. The air inside felt warmer than before, but it didn't smell like anything. It was just thick, around 11:40 or what should have been 11:40. I heard the door to the warehouse creak open. The one I know. I locked behind me, footsteps, slow, uneven, like someone dragging one leg. They passed right by the break room. I held my breath. I could see the shadow through the frosted glass, a tall figure, maybe 6 foot, moving awkwardly. like they weren't used to their own body, and then it stopped. Right in front of the door. It didn't knock, didn't try the handle, just stood there. I could hear this low, rhythmic sound. Not breathing, not humming, more like a pulse coming from it, or maybe from the fog itself. After what felt like forever, the shadow moved on. I didn't come out until daylight started to push through the red outside. Except by morning, the fog was gone, like it had never been there. Sky was clear, bright blue, birds chirping like normal. But here's the part that's never left me. When I went to the front to check the security footage again, it was all there, clear as day. Until 10:33 p.m. Then it cuts. No files, no signal, nothing from 10:33 to 6:01 a.m., just static. Checked with the other shift supervisor who was supposed to come in at 6 o'clock. He never showed. Still doesn't answer his phone. The company said he must have quit without notice. They cleared out his locker and moved on like it was nothing. But I know he was there that night. His car was in the lot the next day. Doors locked. Keys still in the ignition. No signs of him inside. No blood, no prints. Just nothing. Over the next few weeks, I started digging. There are stories, old ones going back decades, local legends, news clippings, even a few old radio broadcasts. Always the same pattern. A strange red fog rolls in, usually in October. Wildlife goes silent. Electronics fail. Someone disappears. Always someone new to town. I found a post on an old forum from 2006. Some guy named Tomas who'd moved to El Paso from San Diego. He said his neighbor told him to stay indoors if he ever saw the fog. 2 weeks later, Tomas stopped posting. The part that really gets me? His last message was just 3 words. It found me. I left El Paso 6 months later, sold my car, broke my lease, packed what I could in a U-Haul, and drove east until I ran out of road. I haven't been back. Don't plan to, but sometimes I still think about the fog, about how still everything got, how time just stopped, and about that thing in the hallway, because when I close my eyes, I can still hear it breathing, and sometimes when it's real quiet, I think I still can. I want to preface this by saying I don't believe in ghosts. At least IDN single quotes T. This happened last year in June of 2024. I live in Austin now, but I grew up in Corpus Christi, southeast Texas, right by the coast. You get all the heat and humidity of Houston, but none of the culture or cool architecture. I loved it as a kid, but when I hit my 20s, I realized that town had something off about it. I just couldn't explain it until recently. I was back there for a few days to check on my mom. She still lives in the same house we grew up in off South Alameda near King High School. Nothing had changed. Same rotting privacy fence, same crooked mailbox, same little angel statue in the front yard missing its nose. I used to ride my bike past that thing every day and touch its head for good luck. Funny how stuff like that stays with you. Anyway, I was staying in my old bedroom for a few nights. Mom had gotten this tiny wall-mounted TV in there, one of those off-brand 19-inch flat screens. She doesn't stream anything. She just uses a basic antenna for local channels. I didn't plan to use it, honestly. I just needed to sleep and head back to Austin on Sunday. That Friday night, June 7th, there was a pretty bad thunderstorm. I remember the time exactly because I had just finished a call with my girlfriend at 11:42 p.m. when the power flickered. Not enough to kill anything, just that weird dimming and buzzing you feel when everything almost goes out. The rain hit hard, smacking the roof like handfuls of gravel. I tried to sleep through it, but the thunder was relentless. The TV, which had been off the whole time, suddenly clicked on. No remote. I didn't even touch it. I sat up, thinking maybe I had hit something in my sleep. But the remote was still across the room on the dresser. The screen showed nothing but static. No sound, just white noise without volume. I got out of bed and walked over to turn it off manually. As I reached for the button, I saw a dot in the middle of the static. Something shifted like a person in the background of an old VHS tape. Flickering in and out, I paused, squinted. I swear my brain didn't register fear at first. Just confusion. And then the image became clear. It was a girl. She looked about 8 or 9 years old, standing dead center in the screen, grainy as hell but definitely there. Hair soaked, clinging to her face. Dress white or maybe light blue was dripping. Her skin was pale, like she had been standing in the cold rain for hours. But her expression is what got me. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She just looked blank, completely empty, and her mouth was moving. Not wildly, not screaming, just slowly mouthing the same sentence on repeat. Over and over. Like she was trying to say something important, but couldn't be heard. I stood there, frozen, for maybe 10 seconds. Then, without warning, the screen snapped back to black. TV off. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was scared, not yet, but because something about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't like a jump scare or a ghost in the closet kind of thing. It was more like I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see. The next morning, I told my mom. She's a quiet woman, very no-nonsense. She makes her own pickles and watches weather reports like it's church. When I described what happened, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she just said, "Don't watch that TV when it storms." That was it. No elaboration. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Just don't." Later that day, I did some digging. I started Googling stuff like Girl on TV Corpus Christi Storm and Ghost Static TV Texas. Didn't get much. But I did find one article from 2012, buried in the archives of a now-defunct local blog. Headline read, "Lightning Kills 8-Year-Old Girl During Surprise Storm." The girl's name was Emily Salinas. She was walking home from school during a freak lightning strike. Apparently, the bolt hit a metal sign nearby, traveled through a puddle, and caught her in the head. It happened on June 7th, same date. 12 years earlier, I looked up the location, and my stomach sank. It happened 6 blocks from my mom's house. She would have passed by it every day. She must have known. I called my cousin Ben, who still lives in town and works for the local fire department. He's kind of a skeptic, ex-military. Not the kind of guy who buys into the paranormal. I asked him if he'd ever heard anything weird about static on TVs during storms. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You saw the girl, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Didn't have to. He told me not to say anything else. Just whatever you do, don't try to read her lips. Apparently, there was this rumor that started in the early 2010s. After Emily died, people in a few neighborhoods, including mine, started reporting weird static signals on analog TVs during storms. The image was always the same, a girl standing still, mouthing something silently. Over and over, some people, curious ones, tried to read. It's not a long message, just a sentence or two. But everyone who figures it out ends up going blind within a week. No joke, like full-on optic nerve failure. One guy supposedly got both corneas detached, and doctors couldn't explain why. Ben said he thought it was an urban legend, until it happened to one of his coworkers, a dispatcher named Lena. She was at home during a storm in 2018, watching a TV that was only picking up static. She told her husband she saw a little girl on the screen mouthing something. She got curious and tried to lip read. She figured it out. Said the message out loud. Within 4 days, she lost vision in both eyes. completely blind. No trauma, no injury. Her doctors thought it was some kind of undiagnosed neurological episode. Ben said she never recovered. At that point, I stopped asking questions. Sunday came around, and I left town early, storm clouds already rolling in again. As I pulled out of the driveway, I looked up at my old bedroom window. The TV was on. Static. I didn't go back inside. A few nights later, back in Austin, I was trying to sleep when I heard a faint buzz from my living room. The storm outside had just started, nothing serious, just thunder and drizzle. But the glow coming from under the door made my chest tighten. I walked into the room and saw my TV, my Roku TV, which has no antenna input, flickering with black and white. Static. My reflection was faint in the screen, and just behind it, her. Same girl, same soaking dress, same dead stare, mouthing words I couldn't hear. I turned away. I didn't watch. I'm still trying not to. It's been 5 days since then. My eyes still work, but sometimes when I blink, I see that flash of static burned into the dark. And I think I know what she's saying now. I didn't mean to. It just clicked in my brain while I was brushing my teeth last night. Like a whisper I'd heard before. I won't write it here. I won't even say it out loud. But if you ever see her during a storm, on some TV that shouldn't even be on, look away. Don't try to understand. Because if you do, she know. I'm not great at writing, so I'll just tell it like I'd tell a friend. I've never posted anything like this before, and I doubt I will again. But I've had this story living in my head for over a year now, and I think it's eating at me more than I'd like to admit. Maybe if I put it out there, it'll finally leave me alone. My wife and I moved to Tyler, Texas, in May of 2022. We bought an older house on a quiet street just outside the city, pretty much the edge of where neighborhoods start to blur into woods. The house had been on the market for a while, which was surprising considering how cheap it was and how much space it had. We were told it was built in 1978, and yeah, it needed some cosmetic work, but the structure was solid. I remember the previous owner, a guy in his 60s, mentioned he was selling because his wife had passed and the house felt too big now. He was polite, but kind of eager to leave. I didn't think anything of it at the time. The house came with a basement. That's unusual for East Texas. If you know the soil here, you know basements aren't exactly standard. But this one had a cellar-style basement, concrete walls, low ceiling, a single exposed bulb on a pull string, about 25 feet long, 12 feet wide. It was bone dry, which I figured was rare luck. We used it mostly for storage, holiday decorations, old books, that kind of thing. About 3 months after moving in, I was down there organizing shelves when I noticed something odd. The wall on the far side, the one that backed up against our neighbor's yard, had a thin, jagged line running vertically down it. It looked almost like a hairline crack in the concrete, except it wasn't there when we moved in. I would have noticed. I check things like that. I'm weirdly paranoid about foundation issues. I pointed it out to my wife, Michelle, that night. She shrugged and said maybe it had always been there and I just missed it. I'm obsessive though, so I took a photo. Date stamped, August 3rd, 2022, 9:42 p.m. I still have it. You can see the crack, faint but present. That photo haunts me now. Over the next couple months, the crack widened. I'd go down there every few weeks and just stare at it. It wasn't normal. It didn't branch like a crack should. It ran straight down, almost perfectly vertical. By November, it was wide enough that I could fit the edge of a screwdriver into it. Michelle thought I was being ridiculous when I brought it up again. She joked that I should stop checking for monsters like a little kid, but I wasn't laughing. Something felt wrong. I started to get this weird feeling whenever I was down there like the air was thicker near that wall. Not humid exactly, just heavier. And the smell faint at first like damp stone and rusted metal. Around Thanksgiving, I decided to measure the basement. I remembered the listing said 25 by 12, but when I paced it, it came out to closer to 27 feet long. I figured I messed up. So I brought down a measuring tape the next day. It measured 27 feet, 4 inches. I double-checked the listing. Sure enough, it had said 25 feet. I thought maybe the listing was just inaccurate. Wouldn't be the first time, but I couldn't let it go. Something was gnawing at me, like there was a splinter in my brain I couldn't pull out. I started keeping notes. Every few weeks, I'd go down there and remeasure. Michelle teased me about it, called it my basement journal. But by mid-January, it was 28 feet, 9 inches. That's when she stopped laughing. We tried to be rational. Maybe we just mismeasured earlier. Maybe the previous owner had the dimensions wrong. But we both knew something wasn't adding up. Concrete doesn't stretch. And yet, our basement was getting longer. We brought in a contractor in February. A local guy seemed trustworthy. He came down, looked around, measured, squinted at the floor. Said everything seemed fine structurally. No sign of buckling or settling. When I asked if it was possible for a concrete room to expand, he gave me a look like I was trying to mess with him. Concrete doesn't grow. Man, he said, wiping dust off his hands. You'd know if something was shifting. You'd have cracks all over your walls upstairs. But we didn't. Everything upstairs was pristine. In March, we noticed water on the floor. Just a small dark patch near the far wall. No visible leak, no rain that week. I touched it. It felt warm. Not hot, just not cold like you'd expect from ground seepage. A couple days later, the concrete started to sweat. That's the only way I can describe it. The walls were damp to the touch, like they were breathing. Moisture. The smell got worse, too moldy and metallic. We bought a dehumidifier, but it couldn't keep up. Michelle stopped going down there altogether. She told me she had a dream one night about the basement filling with water, pitch black and waist deep, and something moving under the surface. She woke up gasping. After that, she wouldn't even touch the basement door. I started mapping it. Not just measuring the walls, I got one of those little laser distance measurers and started charting everything. The far wall kept shifting. Subtle, maybe a few inches every 2 weeks, but it was moving. Not crumbling, not breaking. Moving. That's when I did something stupid. I drilled into the far wall. I just had to know what was behind it. I used a masonry bit and a handheld drill, figuring I'd hit earth or brick. But the bit punched through like drywall, no resistance. I felt this sudden rush of warm air, like something exhaled through the hole. When I pulled the drill out, I leaned in and listened. There was a sound, faint, like shuffling fabric, or maybe breathing. I didn't tell Michelle. I sealed the hole and lied. Said the bit didn't go deep enough. But that night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch until dawn, just staring at the basement door. In April, things got worse. I updated the map and realized the basement now extended under the neighbor's property. I'm not kidding. I used plot maps from the county assessor's office and traced the measurements. The basement, as of April 17th, extended over 63 feet. That's under at least 4 adjacent homes. There is no possible explanation for that. None. I called the city, left voicemails, asked for building records. They never got back to me. Michelle begged me to let it go. She wanted to move. I agreed. But deep down I knew it was too late. Last month, July 3rd, I went down there for the last time. The basement was 74 feet long. The far wall was sweating, so much it looked like it was crying. The smell was overwhelming, sweet and putrid, like something rotting behind a radiator. and the floor. I swear to God, it felt soft, like something just beneath the concrete was pulsing. I turned to go back up, but I froze because I heard footsteps not above me, not behind me, beneath me just one or two at first, then a cluster, like barefoot feet slapping whetstone. I dropped the flashlight trying to get out. The bulb above me flickered, and in that half second before it went dark, I saw the far wall twitch, not crack, not crumble, twitch, like muscle under skin. I ran. I didn't even lock the door behind me. Michelle had already packed a bag. We drove to her sister's place in Arkansas that night and never went back. We sold the house to a property management company. Lost a ton of money. I didn't care. I just wanted out. They listed it as a fixer-upper 2 weeks later. I don't know who lives there now, but I still get emails from the mapping app I used. It keeps sending me updates even though I deleted the account. July 10th, 82 feet. July 24th, 89 feet. August 2nd, 97 feet. I never input those numbers. I don't know who is. And last night, I got one more update. Basement length, 105 feet. Status: expanding. I blocked the sender, but I still can't sleep, because the thing I keep thinking about, the thing that really haunts me, isn't how big it is now, it's where it's going. I grew up in Boerne, Texas. It's a small town not far from San Antonio. Quiet, a little old-fashioned, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and the air always smells like cedar. Summers were long and dusty. Winters were mild. But when the wind picked up through the hills, it could feel like the whole town was holding its breath. When I was a kid, we used to ride our bikes down to a stretch of woods behind Old Fredericksburg Road. It wasn't a real forest, just maybe a dozen acres of thin trees and tall grass, but we called it the backlot. That's where we built forts, smoked our first cigarettes, and told each other the dumbest ghost stories imaginable. And at the center of it, there was the well. It wasn't some fairy tale looking thing with a roof and bucket. It was just a ring of cracked stone set into the ground, barely 3 feet tall. The well itself went straight down, probably 20-30 feet, though we could never see the bottom. Someone had bolted a metal grate over the opening sometime in the 80s, but half the bolts had rusted out, and by the time I was 10, it would rattle and shift if you stepped on it. We used to dare each other to drop stuff down there. Toy soldiers, bottle rockets, a harmonica once. The sound it made when things hit bottom, if they ever did, was this weird, hollow echo, like dropping something into a church steeple full of water. It always sounded off. But here's the thing, and this is where it starts to get hard to explain. Sometimes, the stuff we dropped would come back. Not right away, not the next day, or even the next week. But every now and then, maybe once. A summer, one of us would find something sitting near the well's edge. A melted army man, a rusted flashlight, even the harmonica once. We always told ourselves someone else must have thrown it in and just forgot. Or maybe the well wasn't that deep. Maybe there was a shelf or something it landed on. That was the logic we used anyway. Until the summer Brandon disappeared. Brandon Flores was part of our little group, maybe 11 years old the last time we saw him. He was a bit of a troublemaker, but not in a mean way. Just one of those kids who pushed every dare a little too far. It was early July. I remember because the 4th had just passed, and we were still lighting leftover firecrackers. We were all out at the backlot, as usual, and someone, I don't remember who, dared Brandon to climb down into the well. At first, he laughed it off. But then someone else said they'd seen something shiny down there. It became a thing. We egged him on, told him we'd hold the grate, even tied a rope from someone's dad's garage around his waist. We honestly thought he'd go down a few feet, chicken out, and climb back up. But he didn't. He slipped down past the rim, shoes scraping the stones, and we watched his shape disappear into the darkness. We held the rope tight, talking, laughing nervously, until the rope just went slack. No scream, no struggle. It was like he'd just been unplugged from the world. We panicked, of course. Hauled the rope back up. It was cut clean, like it had been sliced with a knife. We ran to the nearest house and called 911. Cops, firefighters, the whole town showed up. They lowered lights and cameras, but they never found him. Not a trace. They chalked it up to a tragic accident, said maybe. The well had old shafts branching off into the ground. Dangerous, unstable. They sealed it up a week later with concrete and rebar. But the thing that stuck with me, what I never told anyone back then, was what I heard. Maybe a minute after the rope went slack. Everyone else was shouting, but I swear, I heard something. From deep down in the well, a voice. And it sounded like Brandon, but wrong. Stretched, slow, like someone trying to remember how to speak. It said, "Hey, It's okay, I never forgot that. After Brandon vanished, none of us went back there. The woods were declared off limits by the town, and the back lot was eventually fenced off and left to rot. But the story didn't go away. Every couple years, someone would bring up the well. The older kids whispered about it in hallways. I even heard someone claim their cousin saw a handprint on the concrete, the size of a child's. Fast forward 15 years. I'm in my late 20s, working a tech job in San Antonio. My dad passed away that spring, and I had to come back to Bernie to deal with the house. I stayed longer than I meant to, sorting papers, selling furniture, trying to process everything. One afternoon in July, I got in my car and drove past the old neighborhood. I don't know what I was expecting. Just memories, I guess. But when I got near the back lot, something stopped me. The fencing was gone. Like, completely gone. No trespassing signs, no city markers. Just tall grass and silence. And the weirdest part, the well was exposed again. No concrete, no rebar. Just that old ring of stone, like nothing had ever happened. I got out of the car and walked closer. The air was hot, 104 degrees, dry, with no wind. Cicadas were screaming in the trees. Everything felt still, though. Like the whole lot was waiting for something. And sitting right there. Beside the well was a puppet. It was maybe 2 feet. Tall, slumped over with its legs crossed. The face was carved wood, crudely painted, but I recognized it immediately. Same messy brown hair. Same little crook smile. It looked exactly like Brandon. I stood there for at least a minute, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe a Halloween prop. Maybe someone playing a sick joke. Then it tilted its head. Just a little. A twitch. I didn't stay. I turned, walked, didn't run, straight back to my car and drove home. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that puppet. The wooden smile. The way it tilted its head, like it knew me. Over the next week, I tried to find any record of the well being unsealed, construction permits, local news, anything. Nothing. It was like the concrete had never been poured. I even called an old friend who still lived in town, asked if he'd heard anything weird out by the back lot. He paused on the phone for a long time, then said quietly, "It's still moving." At night, I asked what he meant. He said his younger brother, a high school sophomore, had been sneaking out to the woods with friends. They found the puppet weeks ago. First just sitting there, then in different positions. Once it was facing the trees. Another time it was holding a rock in its lap. Last time they saw it, it was pointing toward the road. No one touched it. No one dared. That was a year ago. I haven't been back since, but 2 nights ago, in San Antonio, where I live now, I found something on my porch. A wooden shoe dot about 2 inches long, crude, painted red, with Brandon's name carved into the sole. I don't know what to do. I keep the lights on at night now. I moved the shoe into the trash, but when I checked the can this morning, it was gone. All I know is, if you ever visit Boerne, Texas, don't go near that well dot, and if you do, don't drop anything in, because sometimes things come back. I don't really know how to start this. I haven't talked about that night in almost 3 years. And honestly, I tried to forget it, to chalk it up to a bad dream, a delusion, something explainable. But I saw someone last week, a girl I went to high school with. I hadn't seen her in almost a decade. She used to be bubbly, borderline annoying in how loud and energetic she was. Now she's hollow. Like something's still moving her around, but the person isn't there anymore. And that's when it came flooding back. I need to tell this story. You don't have to believe me, but if you're ever in Dallas, especially near Deep Ellum after midnight, and you see a bus with no number, don't get on. It was February 12th, 2022. Cold night, not snowing, but the wind cut through your jacket. I had stayed out late with a couple friends in Deep Ellum. We were bar hopping, grabbing cheap tacos, the usual Saturday night vibe. My phone had died around 11:40, so I lost track of time, and when I finally noticed most places were closing, I realized it was well past 2 a.m. I said goodbye to my friends, or shouted it across the street, anyway, and started heading toward Elm Street, where I knew the late-night buses passed. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dallas isn't exactly known for great public transit, and you're right. But I lived out near Lake Highlands at the time, and I didn't feel like waiting for an Uber in the cold. I figured I could catch a night bus close enough and walk the rest. There was a stop near the intersection of Elm and Good Latimer. Streetlights flickered, and the sidewalk was empty. Eerily so. I remember thinking how quiet it had gotten. Not just low noise quiet in that unnatural way, like the city itself had shut off. I checked my watch. It was 2:13 a.m. That's when I heard the bus. Not saw it, heard it first. This low, grumbling engine, slower than normal. No headlights at first. Then, around the corner, this old city bus appeared. I swear it looked like it hadn't been cleaned or used in years. The paint was faded, like the green and silver of the older Dart buses from the 90s, but dull and dusty, like someone had wiped it down just enough to be seen. Here's the thing, though. There was no bus number. Not on the front, not on the side. Just a blank destination sign glowing a dim off-white. And no interior lights, just this flickering yellow glow coming from inside. But it stopped. Right in front of me. Doors opened with a hiss. I hesitated. The driver wasn't visible, just shadows. I stepped forward, trying to peek inside, and that's when the smell hit me. Formaldehyde. If you've never smelled it, it's sharp, chemical, kind of sweet, but wrong. I remember dissecting a frog in high school, and the smell soaked into my skin for 2 days. That's what it was like. Like the bus had been soaked in it. Something told me not to get on. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, but it was cold, and I was tired. I told myself maybe the bus was rerouted, or maybe the driver just hadn't updated the sign. I climbed the steps and dropped the couple bucks in the fare box. The driver didn't say a word. I looked up. I swear, I couldn't see his face. Just a dark shape in the seat. I walked halfway down the aisle and sat near the middle. There were a few others, maybe 3 or 4, scattered around, all sitting alone, not talking. Just staring straight ahead. No one looked at me. The bus started moving. Slowly. I didn't recognize the route. We weren't headed north toward the highway like I expected. Instead, the bus meandered through back streets. Old neighborhoods, dark warehouses, areas of the city I'd never seen before. The windows were foggy. I couldn't see much outside, and it was dead silent. No engine noise. No bumps. Just the soft hum of something underneath, like a refrigerator. I tried to check my phone again, but it was still dead. That's when I noticed the guy across from me. He was maybe mid-30s, wearing a torn hoodie and jeans. He looked normal, at first, but then I realized his eyes weren't blinking. Not once. He was just staring forward, unblinking, unmoving. Shifted in my seat, uncomfortable, and turned to look behind me. The others were the same, staring ahead. Not moving. I leaned forward and whispered, "Hey, do you know where this bus is going?" Nothing. Not even a twitch. I started to panic. Got up. Moved toward the front. The driver was gone. I don't mean like he left. I mean there was no one in the seat. The wheel turned on its own. I stood there, gripping the metal pole, heart thudding. The windshield was black. Not like it was night outside, like there was nothing. No street, no lights, no reflection. Just black. I stumbled back to my seat. That's when the man finally turned his head, slowly, and looked right at me. His eyes were wrong. Not empty. Not angry. Just vacant. Like there was nothing left inside. He stared for a moment, then turned back. I don't know how long I was on that bus. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. But eventually, it stopped. Just like that. Doors opened. It wasn't a real stop. Just a patch of overgrown grass and a broken sidewalk lit by a single flickering streetlight. An abandoned gas station sat across the street. I bolted off without thinking. I turned back once. The other passengers were still inside. No one else moved. Doors hissed shut and the bus pulled away, disappearing down a street that wasn't even paved. I stood there shaking, trying to make sense of it. Finally, I walked toward the gas station. No lights, no open signs, just the empty shell of a building. I found out later I was near Hutchins, a good 25 minutes south of where I should have been. No bus goes that way. Not at that hour, especially not through fields and abandoned lots. I walked until I found a Whataburger with power and called my roommate to come get me. He didn't ask a lot of questions. I must have looked like hell. My clothes reeked of formaldehyde. I threw them away the next day. I tried to look up the bus, the numberless route. I even called DART anonymously. They said no bus runs at 2:13 M from Deep Ellum without a route number. No ghost buses, no old fleet still in use, nothing. The woman on the phone told me, in this weird, overly careful tone, if you see a bus without a number or route, don't board it. Just walk away. She knew. I could hear it in her voice. Over the next few months, I started seeing things. People, mostly. People I thought I recognized from that night. In stores, at bus stops. Always staring forward, never blinking. I saw that. Same man in the torn hoodie near White Rock Station a few weeks later. He was just standing there. When I walked past, he turned and looked at me, that same empty expression. Then turned away. I moved a few months later. Left Dallas entirely, but I still take public transit sometimes. And every now and then, I get that feeling, like something's watching. Like I'm being waited for. And always, when it's late and cold and the city goes quiet, I remember the bus, the dark windows, the smell, the driverless seat. I think it's still out. There, picking up the lonely, the tired, the ones just trying to get home. Some of them do, but they're never quite right after. And some, I don't think ever come back. So if you're in Dallas, and you see a city bus with no number pulling up after midnight, don't get on. No matter how tired you are. I don't post often, but I've been reading this subreddit for a while. Never thought I'd have a reason to contribute. But something's been bothering me for over a year now, and I don't think I'll ever make sense of it. I don't know if this is supernatural or just some deep, messed up psychological thing I got caught in, but either way, it felt real. Too real, and it hasn't stopped. This happened in Amarillo, Texas, where I still live. It's a flat, open town in the Texas Panhandle, where the horizon always feels just a little too far away. Lots of wind, big skies, and a kind of quiet that's unsettling if you're not used to it. It was late April of last year when things started. Specifically, April 27th. I remember because it was the same night that storm rolled through. The one with the freak winds and lightning that took out power across half the city. But I'll get to that. I work for a maintenance company contracted by the city. Boring stuff mostly. Checking vacant properties, patching holes in fences, cleaning graffiti. The graffiti part was how I first saw it. That face. The first time I noticed it was behind an old laundromat on NE 24th, around 9:45 a.m. Weather was warm, a little humid. There'd been some rain the night before, so the asphalt still had those dark splotches from puddles drying up. I was there to repaint the back wall that had been tagged with some generic stuff. Nothing unusual. But when I got there, the tagging had already been covered. Not by us. Someone had already gone over it with a mural. A huge one. It was a face. Probably 5 feet tall, smack in the center of the wall. Pale, like bone white, with no eyes. Just empty sockets. But the mouth, it was huge. Way too wide. And it was smiling. Not in a cartoon way or like a stylized thing. It was human. Detailed. Wrinkled skin at the corners, yellowed teeth, creases like laugh lines but deep like scars. The longer I looked at it, the more it felt like the smile wasn't happy. It was cruel. Like it was enjoying something I didn't know about yet. There was no name on it. No tag, just the face. I took a picture with my phone because I thought it was weird someone would put that much effort into a mural in an alley no one used. I brought it up to my supervisor later that afternoon. He thought I was joking until I showed him the picture. And even then, he just kind of shrugged and said, "People paint weird shit sometimes. As long as it's not gang stuff, leave it." That might have been the end of it, but the face kept showing up. Over the next few weeks, I saw it on the side of a busted shipping container near the railroad tracks. On a billboard that had been stripped down to the wooden frame, just the face painted dead center, looking out over I-40. And each time, it was exactly the same. Same grin, same eyeless sockets, same sickly, yellow teeth. No signature. Number. Variation. Like someone had used a stencil, but it was too detailed for that. I started asking around. Not coworkers, they already thought I was being paranoid, but shop owners, some of the guys that hung out downtown. Most people hadn't noticed it. A few had. But the weirdest thing came from a woman who ran this small antique shop off Polk Street. Older lady, probably in her late 60s, with this calm, slow way of talking like she was always halfway between amused and suspicious. I showed her the picture on my phone, and she went quiet. Just stared at it, and she said, "He used to paint that face during the droughts." I asked her what she meant, and she told me there was a man, older white beard, stooped posture, who used to walk around Amarillo in the late 90s and early 2000s. No one knew where he lived. He never asked for money. He'd just appear in random places and start painting that face, always the same way. Pale, grinning, eyeless. She said people started calling him the Grinner, but only as a joke. Nobody knew his name. And then, one year, he just stopped, disappeared. No one really talked about him after that. I asked her if he ever did anything else, And she just looked at me and said, "No, but people always said they had bad dreams after seeing it." That might sound cheesy, but I had started having dreams too. Not nightmares, exactly. Just uneasy things, long hallways, flickering lights. That face, always far away but smiling, just watching me. I chalked it up to coincidence. Maybe my brain latched onto the image, you know? But something else started happening. People around me noticed I was jumpy. My girlfriend at the time told me I'd started grinding my teeth in my sleep. And then one night, I saw him. It was April 27th. Like I said before, that storm was coming. The sky had gone this weird yellowish color on 6 p.m. By 7:30, the winds were ripping hard, and I'd already gotten 2 weather alerts on my phone. My power flickered around 8:10, then cut out completely. I lit some candles and figured I'd just go to bed early. But right around 9 p.m., I heard something, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the concrete. My bedroom's on the 2nd floor, and the window faces the street. I looked out, and at first I didn't see anything. The street lights were out, everything was dark, and the rain hadn't started yet. But then I saw movement near the end of the block. A figure, walking slowly, hunched forward like his arms were heavy. He had something slung over his shoulder, a long object. Maybe a board or plank. It was hard to see clearly, but there was something wrong about how he moved. Not in a supernatural way, just off, like his joints weren't bending right, or he was too light for his size. And then he stopped at the wall of a vacant building across from my place. Just stood there. Didn't look around. Didn't hesitate. Just dropped the plank and started painting. There was no light, but I swear to God, I could see the pale shape of that face taking form, even in the dark. I don't know how long I watched. Maybe 10 minutes. I remember my fingers were clenched, so tight around the windowsill that they ached the next morning. And then the lightning started. One flash, just one, lit up the whole street, and I saw him clear as day. White beard, heavy coat, wrinkled, sunken face. And he was smiling, not like the painted one. This smile was small, sad, tired, but his eyes, his real eyes, were just dark pits. And then he looked at me, not in a vague way, like he was looking around. I mean, he turned and locked eyes with me through my 2nd floor window, like he knew I was there, like he'd known the whole time. The lightning faded. He turned back to the wall and kept painting. I didn't sleep that night. And when I went outside the next morning, the mural was gone. The wall was blank, not freshly painted, not scraped, just clean. Like nothing had ever been there. Like it had been erased. I checked my phone, thinking I'd maybe taken a picture, but there was nothing. Since then, I've seen the face a few more times. Not often. Once on a dumpster behind the Civic Center. Once on an overpass near Western Street. Always in places that feel forgotten. And always gone the next day. But the worst part wasn't the man or the face. It was that a few days after the storm, people online started posting about the clouds that night, saying they saw something weird during the lightning. A shape in the sky, like a face, eyeless, grinning. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's real, but I moved last month. Not far, just south Amarillo, closer to Canyon. And this morning, when I left for work, I passed an old gas station that's been closed since before I was born. On the back wall, in fresh white paint, was that same face, still smiling. Still watching. I didn't stop the car. And this time, I didn't take a picture. I don't expect anyone to believe this. And to be honest, I'm not even sure I do. I'm only writing this down because I haven't slept properly in 3 weeks, and I feel like I'm coming apart. Maybe putting it into words will make it. feel more real. Or less. Back in May of this year, May 17th, to be exact, it was a Friday. I remember that because I'd taken the day off work to drive my younger cousin to a college interview at Dallas. We live up near Denton, so it was about an hour and a half south. He's 17, a little socially awkward, but a smart kid. Name's Josh. We finished the tour and the interview around 3:15 p.m. And after grabbing a late lunch in Richardson, we figured we'd swing by a house I'd heard about before heading back north. It was one of those things you only half remember from a conversation years ago, but once we were in the area, it came rushing back. The Silence House. I first heard about it from a guy I used to work with at a print shop in McKinney. We were killing time on a slow day, talking about weird places in Texas. Goatman's Bridge, the Screaming Bridge in Arlington, that kind of stuff. And he said something like, "There's a house in Plano where sound dies." Like, literally. Even screams don't carry out of it. At the time, I laughed it off. Texas has hundreds of those urban legends. But I remember the way his expression changed when he realized I thought he was bullshitting. He got really quiet, then said, "Don't go near it. It's not haunted. It's wrong. The house is wrong." Anyway, flash forward to May. I figured I'd pull it up on my phone, see if there was anything online about it. Surprisingly, there wasn't much. A couple posts on ghost forums from years ago. One Low Rees YouTube video where a guy just films the outside from his car and talks about how you can't hear birds near it. The address wasn't listed, but someone in the comments had narrowed it down to a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood just east of Bob Woodruff Park. Josh was curious too, and we didn't have anywhere to be, so we drove over around 4 o'clock. The weather was weirdly calm. About 84 degrees, overcast, no wind at all. Not even a breeze. I noticed it almost immediately. The trees weren't swaying, and there were no bugs. Humming, no dogs barking, no traffic sounds. We found the cul-de-sac Cradle Oak Court. It was quiet, but not in a peaceful suburb way. It was empty. Not a single car on the street, not even parked in the driveways. That seemed off, even for a Friday afternoon. Then we saw a third house on the left. Beige brick, 2 stories. Real plain looking, but something about it. I don't know how to describe it. It didn't look abandoned, but it also didn't look lived in. The lawn wasn't overgrown, but the grass had a yellowish tint, like it was halfway between alive and dead. Curtains were drawn in all the windows. No decorations, no porch light, no mailbox, just a door. Solid wood, dark brown. No house number on it. Josh said, "That's gotta be it." I pulled over across the street, left the car running. It was so quiet I felt like we were in a vacuum. Josh got out first, walked toward the sidewalk. I followed, but as soon as I stepped out of the car, the silence hit me like a wave. You don't realize how much noise the world makes until it's gone. It wasn't just quiet, it was dead. No wind, no birds, not even the distant hum of the highway. It felt like standing in a photograph. Even the sound of our footsteps on the sidewalk was dull, like we were walking on carpet. Josh said something, but I didn't catch it. I asked him to repeat himself, and he turned to me with this strange look. He mouthed, "I just said your name," but I hadn't heard anything. We were maybe 20 feet from the house at that point. I could feel something in my chest like pressure, almost like going up an elevation too fast. My ears weren't popping though. It was more like something was pushing inward, making the air feel heavy. Josh didn't seem to notice. He wanted to get closer. I told him we should go. My gut was screaming at me that we shouldn't even be on the same street. He was already at the curb by then, staring at the front door like it was pulling him in. Then the door opened. No sound, no creak, no footsteps. It just opened, only a few inches. enough to see a sliver of darkness inside. Not pitch black, more like that deep gray you see before a storm rolls, and Josh froze. I grabbed his arm and whispered, "We're leaving." I don't know why I whispered. It just felt like anything louder would be wrong, like the air itself would shatter if I raised my voice. We backed up slowly. I never took my eyes off that door. It didn't move. Nobody came out. We got in the car, and as soon as the door shut, it was like someone hit play on the world again. Sound came rushing. Back the low idle of the engine, a crow cawing in the distance, the whir of the AC vents. Josh let out a shaky breath and said, "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer. I just drove out. About 10 minutes later, we were on the highway when Josh said, "Did you hear it?" I asked what he meant. He said, "Inside." When the door opened, I heard something. I asked him to explain, and he got real quiet for a while. Then he said, "It wasn't a voice. Not exactly. It was like a memory of a voice, but not one I recognized." That night, I dropped him off and didn't go home. I stayed at my girlfriend's place in Aubrey. I didn't want to be alone. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up drenched in sweat. I'd been dreaming about the house. Only in the dream I was inside. No walls, just a big dark hallway that went on forever. Carpeted floor, same color as the grass out front, sickly yellow. I couldn't move, and I couldn't scream. The silence was alive, like it was watching me. I didn't go back to sleep. The next day, I tried to find Cradle Oak Court again. I looked it up on Google Maps, tried retracing the route. I even used the GPS history on my phone. Nothing. The street doesn't exist. I called Josh. He answered, but something was off. His voice sounded distant, like he was underwater. He said he didn't remember any house. Said we got lunch and drove home. That was it. No detour, no creepy neighborhood. I went back down to Plano the following weekend. I drove all over that area, especially near Bob Woodruff Park. Found a bunch of streets that looked like the one I remembered, but none of them matched. No Cradle Oak Court. Nothing that even resembled that house. I haven't spoken to Josh since. Not because I don't want to, but because I can't. His number's been disconnected. His parents say he left for school early and is staying in a dorm down in Austin. But when I called the school, they had no record of him enrolling. I know what I saw. I know that house was real. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Once in a while, when it's real quiet like 3 a.m., no cars outside, no one, I swear I hear it. That silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of it. Heavy, thick, alive, like it's waiting. Like it remembers me. And every time I hear it, I get this feeling deep in my chest. The same one I had standing outside that door. That if I open my front door fast enough, someone will already be there, holding it open for me. I never thought I'd actually post on here. I've lurked for years, reading stuff that always felt like it happened to someone else. Someone far away, someone unlucky. But what happened to me last fall? I still don't know how to explain. It doesn't fit neatly into a box like ghost story or home intruder or hallucination. And honestly, I don't want it to be real. I've told myself I imagined it, that I was sleep deprived or drunk or dreaming. But every now and then, around 3:33 in the morning, I'll wake up without a reason. Like something's calling me. And I'll remember her face. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I live in a small town outside of San Angelo, Texas. It's one of those places that has a name nobody outside of West Texas knows, a Whataburger. A church for every 5 people and a lot of space between neighbors. I work IT support remotely, so I don't go out much. That fall, I'd been dealing with insomnia. I'd go 2 or 3 nights a week barely sleeping. I'd just lie in bed and listen to the AC tick on and off, scrolling endlessly or flipping through cable. That's how this all started. Channel. Surfing. It was late. No, early. Exactly 3:33 a.m. I know because I looked right at the microwave clock when I passed the kitchen. I was heading back to the living room with a warm Dr. Pepper, hoping to tire myself out. I sat on my ratty couch, the cushion sunk in from years of use, and I started flipping through channels. Cable TV is a graveyard at that hour. Infomercials, reruns of old sitcoms, static. I usually stopped on the channel that played unsolved mysteries, but that night something weird happened. I clicked past channel 57, static, then 58, which was blank black. No sound, not even the hiss of white noise. I almost kept going, but something about the screen. It flickered, not like a tech issue, more like movement. I clicked back. Channel 58, still black. But then, after maybe 5 seconds, the screen lit up. Not a full image, but like an old analog signal trying to push through. There were faint vertical lines, and a flicker of light, just enough to see a pale shape in the center. I leaned forward. The shape moved. Girl, I think, standing in what looked like a long hallway. The image was grainy as hell, like it was shot on VHS, but I could tell a few things. She was maybe 12 or 13. Long black hair that hung past her shoulders. And her eyes, I swear to God, they were completely black. No reflection, no white. Just empty sockets. She stared directly at the camera, not blinking. Not swaying, just staring. I remember I said, "The hell is this?" Then she moved her lips, slowly, silently. I couldn't hear a thing, but I could make out what she was saying. "I know you." I flipped the channel instantly, back to infomercials. I was breathing hard, heart racing like I'd been caught doing something wrong. I even laughed a little to myself like, okay, that was creepy. Someone's weird art project? Pirate broadcast? I looked back at the microwave clock. 3:35 a.m. I didn't sleep that night. Next day, I Googled around. Couldn't find anything. About channel 58, I called my cable provider and asked what station it was supposed to be. They said there is no channel 58 in my area. They don't broadcast anything on it. I asked if someone could hijack the signal. The rep just kind of chuckled and said, maybe in the 90s, not now. So I left it alone. Or tried to. But the next night, I couldn't help myself. I stayed up again, on purpose this time. I kept checking the clock, watching it tick closer to 3:33. When it hit, I turned on the TV. Channel 58. At first, nothing. Then, static. Flickering. Then her. Closer this time. The hallway behind her looked the same, long, shadowy, almost like a school corridor. The kind with lockers and flickering fluorescent lights. But she was maybe 10 feet from the screen now. Still staring, still unblinking, and again. She mouthed the same words. I know you. This time I felt something. Not just fear, like recognition. I don't know how to explain it. Something about her face felt familiar. Like I'd seen her before, but younger. Or older. Not in person, but maybe in a dream. Or a childhood memory I couldn't place. She raised her hand and pointed directly at me. I turned off the TV. The screen went black, but I could still see her in my head. That night, I dreamed of a door. It was metal, red, and covered in scratches. It was at the end of a hallway, maybe the same one from the broadcast. I walked toward it, hand outstretched, and just as I reached for the handle, I woke up. Same time every night now. 3:33 a.m. This went on for 4 days. Always the same. The girl, the stare, the words. Closer, every night. By the 4th night, she was so close I could see her face clearly. And I swear, It wasn't just her eyes that were black, her mouth too, like it was a void. No tongue, no teeth. Just emptiness. I decided not to check the channel the fifth night. Instead, I unplugged the TV, put my phone in a drawer, slept with earplugs. I still woke up at 3:33, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. I was done. I told myself I was done, but on the sixth night, something different happened. It was storming outside. One of those sudden, West Texas thunderstorms that rolls in like the apocalypse. Wind shaking the windows. Rain slamming against the roof. The power flickered a few times before finally going out around 2:40 a.m. No internet. No lights. Nothing. I sat on the couch with a flashlight, staring at the blank TV like a moron. Just waiting. And then, even though the power was out, the TV flickered on channel 58. The screen lit up. And she was right there. Her face filled the whole screen, just her eyes and mouth. The voids. Her hair falling across her forehead. She didn't say anything this time, she just stared. I tried to stand, but I couldn't move. Not out of fear, like physically. My legs felt disconnected. My hands tingled. The room felt heavy. Like gravity had doubled. She blinked. Then, from the TV speakers, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, I heard, "Open the door." And just like that, the screen went black. Power came back a few seconds later. Lights flickered on. TV stayed off. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I checked the front and back doors. Both locked. I looked around the house. Nothing out of place. Until I walked into the hallway by the garage. There was a door there I hadn't seen before. Red, metal, scratched. Exactly like the one in my dream. I didn't touch it. Just stared. I called my landlord. Asked him if he'd had any work done recently. Any renovations, repairs, installations. He said no. Said that part of the house hadn't been touched in years. Said there's no reason a door should be there. I hung up. I thought about opening it. For days I thought about it, but I never did. That was almost 8 months ago. The door is still there. And every once in a while, around 3:33 a.m., I swear I hear the TV turn on in the other room, just for a second. Sometimes I catch myself walking down the hall, hand outstretched toward the handle. I'll wake up standing in front of it, unsure how I got there. Last night, I taped over the door with heavy black plastic and nailed a bookshelf in front of it. But I know it's still there. And I know she's still watching. If you live in Texas, and you're up late flipping channels around 3:33 a.m., don't stop on channel 0, because it's not blank. She's there. And she knows you. I wasn't planning to share this because I've convinced myself for years that I misremembered things. But recently, I was going through a box of old stuff with my ex-wife and we found a photo. One that shouldn't exist. The picture brought everything back. And I haven't slept right since. This happened in 2002, the summer after we got married. I was 27. Amy was 24. We were just a couple of dumb, broke newlyweds doing a road trip through the Southwest. No itinerary, just a paper map and a disposable camera. Gas was cheaper back then, and we were chasing that romantic idea of hitting the road and sleeping in crappy motels and diners. It was July hot even after sundown. We had just left Big Bend earlier that day and were headed toward Marfa, Texas. Amy had heard about the Marfa lights, those weird glowing orbs people report in the desert. She was obsessed with that kind of thing. Ghost towns, UFO sightings, energy vortexes. I thought it was nonsense, but I liked how excited she got about it. So we aimed the car west. We got into Marfa a little later than we planned. Around 9:30 p.m., the sun had just dipped below the horizon, and the sky still had that deep blue haze you get after a long day of heat. We were starving and tired. The first motel we passed was full, and the guy at the desk told us everything. In town was booked for some kind of art event. I don't remember what it was called, but apparently Marfa has this artsy community vibe. I had no clue. We drove around for another hour, hoping to get lucky, but every place had that "no vacancy" sign glowing red in the windows. Amy was getting cranky. I was trying not to snap at her. Around 10:40 p.m., we passed a little roadside diner called La Luna Cafe just off Route 90, about 5 miles east of Marfa. It was still open, surprisingly, so we pulled in to grab a bite and regroup. I remember it was empty inside except for this older couple in the back, and the waitress, this quiet, pale woman who barely spoke above a whisper. Amy got a grilled cheese. I had chicken fried steak. It was one of those meals where the food doesn't really matter because you're just relieved to be off the road for a bit. The place felt off though. It was too quiet. No music. No clatter from the kitchen. And the lights flickered every few minutes like they were on a dying generator. But it was late and we were exhausted, so we didn't really care. When we asked the waitress if there was a place to stay nearby, she paused like she had to think about it. "There's the Desert Days Motel, down the road about 10 minutes, she said. Small place, but they usually got a room open. She even wrote it down on a napkin. Desert Days Motel. We paid in cash, thanked her, and drove off into the night. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, we saw a dot that looked like something from the 50s. A long, low row of single-story units with green doors and faded numbers. The neon sign was only half lit, buzzing like a fly zapper. Days Mo. The rest was burned out. There were maybe 6 cars in the lot. A few of the rooms had lights on behind the curtains, but it was dead silent. No office in sight, just a little bell on the door and a note taped to the glass. Ring bell for manager. We rang. This guy came out who looked like he'd been sleeping in his clothes. Middle-aged, sunburned skin, eyes that didn't quite look at you. He didn't say much. Just asked how many nights. We said 1. Paid $40 in cash. He handed us an old-fashioned brass key. Room 6. Room 6 was at the very end of the row. The room smelled like dust and stale AC, floral bedspread, rotary phone, a Bible on the nightstand with a cracked leather cover. The TV was one of those old CRT models with a built-in VCR. A laminated channel guide was stuck to the side with yellowing tape. I remember Amy laughing about how retro it was. She kept saying it felt like stepping into a time capsule. She took 2 photos inside the room, one of the bed and one of me brushing my teeth in the bathroom mirror. I didn't think much of it. We watched whatever was on TV for a while some. Local weather channel on loop. Eventually, we passed out. Here's where it starts getting weird. Around 3:15 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No noise or nightmare. Just that instinctive snap-awake feeling. The room felt too quiet. Like someone had turned the sound off on the world. Amy was still asleep. But the air in the room felt wrong, like it had pressure. Heavy, still, almost. Humid. I thought maybe the IC had shut off, so I got up to check the unit. It was still running, but barely, just a low hum and an occasional clunk like it was struggling. Went to the window and pushed the curtain aside. There were no cars in the lot anymore. None, not even ours. I froze. I thought maybe I was groggy. Missed seeing things. I opened the door to step outside. The air was cold, not cool cold. Like 40 degrees in the middle of July. And dead silent. No wind. No insects. No sound. The whole motel was pitch black except our room. Even the neon sign was out now. Just empty desert in all directions and our little pool of yellow light spilling onto cracked pavement. I remember standing there for what felt like minutes, my breath fogging in front of me. I backed into the room slowly and locked the door. I didn't wake Amy. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling until the sky started to lighten. When we checked out, there was no one at the desk. No sign of the manager. We just left the key on the counter and got back in the car. Except our car was covered in dust, like it had been sitting there for months. We drove back to Marfa in silence. Neither of us talked until we hit a gas station where we bought water and filled up. I asked the clerk if he knew the Desert Days Motel. He just gave me this blank look. You mean Desert Inn? That closed like 30 years ago. No, Desert Days, east of town near a diner called La Luna. That's when he shook his head. There's nothing out there, man. Just Scrubland. Closest diner that weighs 30 miles, and it's been shut down since the 80s. We pulled out the napkin. It was blank. Just a greasy square of paper. I made Amy show me the photos from the night before. Only one of them came out. The one of me brushing my teeth. But the mirror? The reflection shows me, yeah, but behind me. The bed is empty. Amy's not there. Just a big black shape leaning against the wall in the corner. Like someone tall, standing perfectly still. You can barely see it unless you really look. Amy swore. Up and down she took that photo while I was brushing, and she was lying in bed behind me, watching TV. We still don't know what the hell we stayed in that night. We went back 2 years later. Same stretch of highway. Nothing. No diner. No motel. Just dirt and barbed wire fence. I've Googled it more times than I can count. I've asked locals, posted in forums, even checked property records. That plot of land's been empty since the 1940s. Burned down in a fire, apparently. Motel never rebuilt. No diner ever registered at that address, but we have the photo. And when I looked at it again last week, I noticed something I hadn't before. In the mirror, in the dark corner behind me, that tall black shape. It's leaning closer now. Like it's noticed I can see it.